in the week. So 2 players will be 1 match away from qualifying for the World Championship. But giving you guys a little bit of a preview of the first match to come, it's b787 taking on fr0zen. And our very own Rachel had a chance moments ago to talk with b787 and fr0zen about their upcoming match. Let's take a look.
Thanks, TJ. We're here in the player warm-up area, and I've got b787 and fr0zen who are going to play our first match of the day. Now, b787, what do you think of the Bahamas?
It's absolutely wonderful. I've never been to a place like it, and it's really nice to be here.
Have you been hitting up the bars and the buffet?
Yep, absolutely.
Nice choices. Now, fr0zen, what do you think of this location? You've seen a lot of locations in your day.
It's pretty contrasting to my hometown, which is probably snowing right now, and can't really complain about the sunshine we get every day here.
Well, you've been on the road a while. You came from Trinity Series, straight from PAX, straight to the Bahamas. Have you had a chance to rest?
Yeah, but between days, I still have to get my practice and get ready for my matches.
Keeping his focus, I like it. Now, b787, you had an interesting story about your name because you like to travel a little bit too, and it's related to the airplane?
Yep, it is. I used to live in Canada for my high school years, and just before I was scheduled to come back to Japan, I was scheduled to go on a Boeing 787. So I was like, why not? I'll just use this as my name. And like, now I'm here with the name, yeah.
It's good fortune. Well, congratulations to both you guys for making it this far, and good luck in your match. Back to you guys.
There's sort of a little bit of a David versus Goliath story coming up with these guys. And so we're going to go ahead and check in with the guys who will be bringing you that first match. It's the fabulous fr0zen and the beautiful Brian Kibler. Are you guys excited?
Incredibly excited, TJ. I don't even think that does justice for the emotion. Welcome, everybody, to the tavern. It is time to begin the Winter Championship. My name is fr0zen. I am joined by Brian Kibler of Brian Kibler Gaming. How you doing, Brian? Welcome to the Bahamas.
I'm doing great. You know, having a wonderful time here in the Bahamas, you know, out on the beaches. But I don't know if I can go out and be blinded by this jacket. It's brighter than the sun, I think. But
well,
no, it's been great.
Glad you brought your sunglasses, and I hope you guys have packed your bags because we're definitely in for quite a ride for this weekend's matches. We have 4 days of Hearthstone action. Today we're going to be doing 8 matches, all best of 7. So we've actually expanded how we're actually doing the format for this tournament, Brian.
Yeah, it's going to be a long day full of some great Hearthstone. We're going to have the quarterfinal matches, or rather the group matches, and then the upper bracket winners matches and the deciders for those matches. So lots of important games of Hearthstone going on today. And the first one will be b787 versus fr0zen.
That's right, a clash between Asia Pacific and the Americas. And remember, this is the first time all year that we've had global competition, something that's unprecedented in the championship tour. If you watch the previous years, we had every region play separate of BlizzCon. And BlizzCon was when China, when Asia Pacific, when Europe and America could all come together and prove who's on top, at least for this metagame and rotation, because we are looking forward to what's coming up, but we are going to close out Mage Streets of Gadstan with a bang, and of course, the Year of the Kraken. Who's going to be able to have the final say here, Brian?
Yeah, and this is going to be a really interesting matchup. These two players have very different both sort of backgrounds as well as styles. fr0zen is known as a player who is playing a lot of control decks, or rather a lot of combo decks very, very well, whereas b787, on the other hand, as we see on the screen, he's very, very dedicated to playing control. He actually told us that he was inspired by watching fellow Japanese player Matson last year at the Winter Championship, and that brought him to play in tournaments. And Matson was very well known for playing Control Warrior, and b787's lineup, that is all control decks. He even said he'd rather play control decks and lose than play other decks and win. He's that dedicated to that style of play.
Yeah, absolutely astounding to see Reno Priest being brought to a tournament. I'm sure Brian's very excited as a Reno Priest specialist himself. We can't get underway soon enough, but we're going to head over to TJ, Raven, and Saddle to get our first words for this opening match.
Thanks very much, guys. And I think the big preview that you gave there is that this is the first time that all 4 regions will be competing for a seasonal championship. And it really begs the question, which one's the best region? And I know your guys' answer, but we had the chance to talk with the players and get to know their thoughts on which region has bragging rights coming into the Winter Championship. And let's go ahead and take a look on this edition of Observe and Reflect.
Observe and reflect.
Best region is APAC.
Americas is the strongest region.
China is the strongest.
European region is the best. There's way more top players.
China has LVGE and Omega Zero. They are very strong.
It's the Americas region, hand down. We are the best region. Our talent is talent. It is the cream of the crop.
Although America has a lot of top tier players, I expect Europe to do the best because I'm here, of course.
I think Europe is the best, but America and other regions are definitely catching up.
I would have to cheer for America because fr0zen, Tyree are really great players that I respect a lot.
I feel that there aren't any exceptional regions that stand out to me so far. But I think it's definitely about the players and how few mistakes they make.
Different regions have different archetypes of decks. I know a lot of Asian players play really unique cards in their decks. Europe and America, we just play the decks that are the best.
Of course, I'm going to say the Americas is going to do the best. But if one of us gets out, I think we might let a European player slide through to the top 4.
Observe and reflect.
Lots of differing opinions, different words from these players. But Saddle, I'm going to go ahead and ask you, which region's the best?
I don't know why this is even a question. Europe is the best region free. We have the strongest representatives here. We have the strongest representatives in general. We have 2 European world champions. Like, how is this even a question, TJ?
Raven?
What he said.
Yeah. Fair enough, fair enough. But this is the first time, the way the groups work out, that we could have 4 participants in the World Championship coming from winner from the same region. We could have 4 European representatives come through this tournament. We could have 4 America's representatives come through this tournament.
Oh.
Anything can happen, anything can happen. But we'll see. The first one is going to be the Americas versus Asia Pacific. And it's time to introduce the players for our very first match. Coming up first, from the United States, he's the combo deck master, it's fr0zen. And his opponent from Japan, the Asia Pacific Winter Playoff Champion, it's b787.
It's go time! b787 versus fr0zen.
For my group, I think I just absolutely nailed it.
Looking at like the deck lists, fr0zen was the player I didn't want to play the most, and he's my first opponent.
I don't think he's a bad player by any means, but his lineup versus mine is pretty much unwinnable.
I'm done.
I feel like I'm one of the best players in this tournament, and I have the lineup to win.
Just being the underdog and like having nothing to lose is a better position for me to be in. I just want to be myself when I play the game.
Yeah, very confident.
b787 versus fr0zen. Let's see what you got.
A clash of East versus the West. fr0zen versus b787 coming up for you guys. And not just any kind of East versus West, too. It's Japan versus America, a rivalry that's been long dated in history of card games. Welcome, everybody, to the tavern. My name is fr0zen, joined by Brian Kilber once again. And we will be bringing you this best of 7 Conquest format for the opening match of the Winter Championship. Brian, these 2 players have a lot of opinions on their lineups. In fact, fr0zen feels like he is the overwhelming favorite, 80-20, to win this match.
Yeah, this is really interesting because in the quarterfinals of the Asia Pacific playoffs, it was b787 who was actually in a very similar position. He was the massive favorite versus an opponent who was felt to be a huge underdog. He said then that felt like a huge pressure on him because it was kind of his match to lose. There was so much riding on it for him, and he felt like things could go wrong, and everyone thought he was a huge favorite, but he wasn't quite so sure. That was an incredibly close match, one of the sort of most exciting matches we saw throughout all of the playoffs. So we'll see if he can have a similarly powerful result in this one.
Yep, we're going to start things off with mid-range Shaman from b787. Not to be confused with the Jade Shaman. It's got classic mid-range cards that you've come to expect, including a special cameo by Alakir the Windlord. fr0zen's going to be playing a Miracle Rogue featuring Barnes. One of the most interesting thing about rogues in this tournament, Brian, is the second most represented class behind Warrior, and a lot of the rogue deck lists differ between every single variation.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different rogue decks. There are Miracle Rogue decks, like the one that fr0zen is playing. These decks tend to be the strongest against slow control decks, which is most of what makes up b787's lineup. But there's also the Water Rogue, the Finja package rogue decks, as well as even a Stealth Rogue featuring the Shadow Sensei, but it will be Miracle Rogue we see fr0zen piloting this game, and pretty standard Miracle Rogue start of nothing into dagger up.
Yeah, this is a very slow start for fr0zen, but nothing to be too worried about considering that he has really powerful tempo plays available into his hand. He's got 2 backstabs of how he wants to distribute his damage. And of course, Edwin Van Cleef, one of the most threatening cards for the early game. However, b787, he's got some of those answers. Hex, even on Tomb Pillager, can be very big swings for this matchup.
Yeah, b787 also with the relatively strong proactive start of the Totem Golem, and then as you mentioned, the pair of hexes really looking to potentially stymie what fr0zen has for his own offense. That said, if the game goes long, it will actually be the Gadgetzan Auctioneer. We see it in fr0zen's hand right here. That's the key card. That's the card that fr0zen's looking to build to allow him to chain a number of spells and keep drawing additional spells and just get a massive resource advantage over b787.
fr0zen, of course, stuck in a position where he doesn't have a clean answer to the Totem Golem, which is one of the most powerful cards you can have in the early stages of the game. And b787 also taking it slow. You know, he had the opportunity to utilize the coin the previous 2 turns, but choosing to save that for a rainy day because overload can be problematic as the game develops. And fr0zen wants to lock up b787's future turns. He's using Sap on the Totem Golem, which is a very unconventional use, especially if they're not playing aggressive strategies. What do you think about this, Brian?
I think some of this is also recognition of how fr0zen is planning to use his mana over the next few turns. He has the Tomb Pillager that he wants to play on this turn, and then potentially he wants to have the ability to maybe backstab Edwin and use an additional card that he's drawn on a future turn as well. That basically lines up his mana very well in terms of the expenditures here, and doesn't allow b787 to get that pressure, which threatens to cut off fr0zen's turns to build up to the Auctioneer.
Now, b787 has access to up to 4 mana this turn. We mentioned that Hex earlier is one of the most powerful tools against Rogue, primarily because even denying the coin is important, but more importantly, Rogue never gets the board. One of the big advantages Rogue has is it can leverage board to end the game in 2 turns. fr0zen being able to draw a 4-mana play or Azure Drake would have been very huge, and we'll see what happens off this card.
All right. And there's a lot of good options here. That's not a bad one.
Wow.
The Tomb Pillager here with the Death Rattle will give fr0zen an additional coin when it dies. That will give him more fuel for the Gadgetzan Auctioneer in those additional turns where he's building up resources.
That's super important, not just because of the fact that he has Auctioneer, but what if he wants to go for a big Van Cleef? He saw 1 Hex being used. It's very unlikely that your opponent has a second copy this early into the game. Perhaps fr0zen chooses to go a little bit more aggressive. We'll see. He has to evaluate his hand. For now, b787 very calmly removing because he knows that he's the control deck in this scenario.
I think that b787, yes, he has to play control, but at the same time, he needs to be putting pressure on because fr0zen just got an extra coin. He has a very full hand of cards. He could very easily start very soon going off with that Gadgetzan Auctioneer. He could even play it this turn if he wanted to. I think he's going to play it a bit slow. There's not much pressure on him, so just giving himself the opportunity to build up more resources. And I really like this from fr0zen. He's not going nuts and investing a ton of resources in terms of building up a giant Edwin Van Cleef. He knows that b787 has access to Hex. He knows he has a lot of removal that can take out big minions, especially with a minion already on the board. So just building up those resources, getting to that Auctioneer turn.
There's several ways for b787 to remove this. I think the priority is, again, building board pressure, because one of the things he hasn't been able to do is start pressuring the Rogue's life total. Rogue does not have access to healing in its class, doesn't have access to taunts, unless you put them, of course, from the neutral card pool. And as a result, if you're able to put up some mounting pressure with things like Jinyu, with things like Azure Drake, you're able to actually start threatening to end the game, and they have to be the one to swing it back.
Yeah, and b787 goes with the Flame Tongue, allows him to remove the Edwin Van Cleef and develop a bit more threat on the board as well. This does give fr0zen a good opportunity to start going with his Auctioneer and Backstab, though.
Yeah, there's a lot of draws. So many cheap 0 to 1 mana spells. Conceal is pretty good, but we do know that Azure Drake needs to be removed primarily because of the double Maelstrom Portal or even just Lightning Storm possibility.
He has the preparation here. He has a coin here. He has a lot more to dig. Not to mention, he just has the dagger waiting that can at least remove. Okay. Oh, so he's actually not going to be able to take care of the Azure Drake.
Oh, well, for now. He's using Cold Blood just to cycle through his deck. Still not hitting any kind of removal.
Yeah, he could prep, but he has 5 minions in his hand. He'd have to hit Fan of Knives, perhaps hit Eviscerate to be able to clear off this board.
And this is the strength of what b787 did the previous turn. You know, he put his Azure Drake onto the board, knowing that his opponent had that coin from the Barnes Tomb Pillager activation, and saying, if their opponent has a good Gadget Stand turn right now, I need to have Azure Drake on the board, otherwise I would have to get fortunate by using all my AoE or getting a spell damage totem.
And there is the Lightning Storm, as you mentioned. Interestingly, b787 also has the 2 Maelstrom portals. He could have chose to guaranteed clear with double portal and leave himself with the Storm for later and develop more minions on the board. Also, now he rolls after. I think that maybe he was trying to Lightning Storm and then be able to follow up with, say, a Jinyu for additional damage, but he ended up putting himself in a position where he kind of had to waste a resource here.
Yeah, I think he went for the ideal scenario. He's saying 50% of the time, I'm able to get the Lightning Storm for 4, and then Jinyu Water Speaker my own Azure Drake, because he just showed he doesn't have Eviscerate or easy ways to remove it. This is my opportunity to get tempo. And as a result, he's very far behind the board now here.
Yeah, he's now that Lightning Storm is gone, and he only has 1 Maelstrom portal. He doesn't have an easy way to clear off this board without investing additional resources. He could use the Maelstrom portal and Flame Tongue and be able to clear off both things here. He also has the Jade Lightning, in addition to, say, Maelstrom portal or Flame Tongue that can clear off as well. And yeah, he's going to go ahead and use the Jade Lightning. This does allow him to develop more to the board. And interestingly, the result from the Maelstrom portal being the mixtures does mean that little bit of chip damage that b787 has been able to get in, now it's gone. He's just healed up Frozen for 4.
Hey, you know, Rogue will take it. We don't have much healing, so even 4 health can be very useful. That Fan of Knives also looks very nice in Frozen's hand because he has the abilities with Blood Mage Thanos or Azure Drake to pair together and remove a lot of the board. What's on the priority list here for Frozen, though? Because, you know, it has been relatively slow. Not much action in terms of pressuring the game, which is what Rogue really wants to do.
Yeah, and the key here for Frozen is really digging through and finding his burst damage, finding his ability to just get that pressure on b787. The problem, though, is that he actually does need to establish threats on the board for an extended period of time. He's playing against a deck that has a reasonable amount of healing. We see the Jinyu Water Speaker in b787 hand here. So what he's looking to do, and I like this, is to just develop enough pressure and threaten the board across multiple minions that he is really forcing b787's hand to actually use removal, get a hit in with one of these minions, and maybe be able to keep it in play and get that repeat damage going. The burst damage alone will not be enough.
Yeah, so Hex immediately comes out from b787 hands. He's saying, let's get one thing straight. I'm going to Hex this questing adventure, way too threatening. His follow-up plays, he does have a couple of other options at his disposal. A little bit rushed, you know. You do want to sometimes take your time to think, but I think we can agree that hexing that minion was one of the utmost our priorities.
Oh yeah, the questing adventure can just get absolutely out of hand. I mean, people even call this questing rogue, not even necessarily miracle rogue, because questing adventurer is such a key element in terms of your ability to win games, even compared to Gadgets and Auctioneer in a lot of cases. Conceal is a reasonable draw, but at the same time, he doesn't really expect there to be much additional removal from b787 because he's already seen his Tomb Pillager live through a turn. So what he's really afraid of here is b787 finding additional area effect to clear off more of his minions.
Which is what b787 has set up for. He has the Azure Drake and the Maelstrom portal, so he has successfully baited Frozen into it. Pit Snake not exactly the most resilient minion against the Rogue Dagger, and Frozen has opportunities to win back the board, but one thing to consider is how many threats remain in Frozen's deck.
Right.
Because he needs actual minion damage to close the game. He does have Leroy and Cold Blood and Conceal, one of these ways to all in, so to speak, but I think he has one more threat remaining into his deck. I believe it's one questing adventure.
I believe the questing adventure. He does have Auctioneer, #2, I believe.
That's true.
Though, which is a minion, but it's not really a huge threat in its own right.
So what b787 could be doing is just trying to play a survival game. And look at Frozen. He's saying, my hand is telling me to be aggressive. My opponent's used 2 Maelstrom portals and a Lightning Storm. This Leroy has a very high chance to live at this point. And your opponent's also used a couple of his taunts. Feral Spirits, the only copy in the deck, has also been used.
Yeah, and this is, I think, Frozen sort of recognizing, okay, I'm in a rough spot here. b787 is going to have the board. I need to just try and get the job done now. And you know, he's done 13 damage here. But I believe with that Bloodlust in b787's hand, he doesn't have very much time. There's 6, 7, 8 on board plus 12. There's 20. Oh, no, yeah, that's right. 20 damage available for b787 plus, you know, if he did have additional burn, but I believe he's used all of his burn, barring 2 lightning bolts in his deck.
But the Jinyu Water Speaker
true.
might also be able to buy him a turn too. Because when you see your opponent be this aggressive, you have to be wondering if they have enough damage. Also, there's a possibility that b787 gets a taunt totem.
Yep.
And it's very clear that Frozen, with 2 Phantom Knives being used, is not going to be able to deal with this wide board as easily. I think Bloodlust has a chance to end the game the next turn. And, you know, b787 is just going to throw out as much as he can at this point and say, I'm pretty sure you don't have enough resources to kill me at 23. No taunt totem, so right now Frozen's a little short.
Yeah, and b787 has also seen both copies of Phantom Knives, so there's a very good chance these wide board of small minions get to stay. And ooh, classic air draw from Frozen from the Rogue here. He is really looking for something big, and counterfeit coins certainly is not it.
There wasn't many cards remaining in Frozen's deck. You mentioned the Auctioneer being one of them, but another Questing Adventure. But any of those would not have been enough. He is short by 6 damage this turn.
Yeah, for those of you who haven't seen some of our recent weeks of HCZ broadcasts, you can actually see the cards remaining in the players' decks with these counters here. So only 5 cards left in Frozen's deck here. As you were mentioning, not many of them very powerful, but what is powerful is Bloodlust. It gives a huge power boost to b787's board, and that is game 1 going to the Japanese player.
Huge win for b787. He mentioned all throughout the weekend in his own piece, he said, I am a huge underdog. I have nothing to lose. I am the one that's not favored at all. Frozen has the anti-control lineup. And guess what? b787 happens to bring an all-control lineup. 3 Reno decks. We'll see if he's able to follow up on it, but b787, he's got a lot of room to go. You know, even if he's getting this first win, it's a best of 7, anything can happen.
Yeah, these are, you know, long matches here. We have best of 7 means that, yes, he got through with his Shaman deck, but I think that his Shaman deck is sort of the least controlling of his lineup. We saw he was able to take a pretty proactive stance in the middle there, which allowed him to close out the game with Bloodlust, a very good card in a lot of these matchups where you need to put your opponent on a clock.
Yeah, well, b787, the APAC Winter Champion, has had a memorable run through the Hearthstone Championship Tour. His introduction to the big stage was certainly memorable. Here's why.
It's probably the best moment of my life.
By the skin of his teeth, b787 gets Biologium to book his ticket to the Bahamas.
The quarterfinal match in the APAC Winter Playoffs, it was like my first ever big tournament, like on camera and all that.
He's clearly so stressed out.
I was actually very nervous going into the game against Belgium. Everyone was telling me I'm so favored. That was just so much pressure, and I was like so nervous, and I basically made a lot of mistakes.
This is just a nightmare for b787.
The Bahamas was on the line, and like I'm playing against like a really famous player from Korea. So like yeah, I just wasn't myself.
And now we're at a tied series, Brian, putting b787 under a lot of stress here. Look at him. He's clearly shaken.
That game, it was so crazy. I can probably like recall every single turn I did still.
Oh, and there's the Jade Lightning.
I top decked Jade Lightning, and if I didn't get that top deck, I would have been dead, like 100%. He played a Dirty Rat.
Oh no, Roja once again. So close. Oh my god.
I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna win. I was like, oh my god, how is this even happening?
Congratulations to b787. Boy, did he make it dramatic. That was crazy.
I'm so sorry. There's just so much stuff. Getting so far in this game means a lot to me because I spent so much time playing it. And I dedicated a lot of effort into it.
The APAC Winter Champion has been playing tournaments for very long, and that usually is a pretty healthy sign for players who feel like they have nothing to lose. Pressure on the big stage. Sometimes it's hard for players to digest if they're new to the tour. But b787 does, you know what? I feel like I can play very free. You know, I feel like the burden's on Frozen, very similar to how he was against Roja.
Yeah, kind of the opposite. Like we said, we saw him talking about how he was such a big favorite in his quarterfinal match to get here to the Bahamas. But now he's the underdog, and he's ahead in the match.
For now, of course, we know that anything can transpire in this best of 7. We're going to go to Reno Mage versus the Miracle Rogue. Frozen's going to stay put here. Now he's got some really powerful cards, and the Reno Mage versus Rogue matchup has a lot of debate behind it, Brian.
Yeah, the Rematch versus Rogue, a lot of it really hinges on particular cards. One of the strong cards in the matchup is certainly Conceal. Because if you were able to establish, say, a questing adventurer, which is one of the reasons people call this questing rogue, and then conceal it, you can get huge chunks of damage in, and that can be very difficult for the mage to deal with their very limited non-damage-based removal. Essentially, they have polymorph. If you're able to get a questing big enough to deal with your questings and your Edwin Van Cleef. That said, if the game goes long, there are so many powerful tools in the Reno Mage deck that can make it very difficult for the Rogue to win. You can quite literally kill every damage source in their deck if you get the right tools.
Yep, the logic applies to the same of a lot of these board-centric power decks. You look at Tempo Mage, you look at the Questing Rogue, and the theme is very similar. It's if I remove all of the threats, they can't win the game. They're going to draw so fast that they'll have no chance to win in Fatigue. So if the Reno Mage draws all the removal pieces and make sure to line that up, they're in a good spot. fr0zen tosses the first questing adventure out very loosely, just sends it as a 2/2. That's a very interesting play here from fr0zen.
Yeah, and I think that's has something to do with the texture of his hand. He views that he's likely to be using all of his mana over the next several turns, and kind of forces b787 to have it. He is playing against a Reno deck. And there are, lots of hands where he may be forced to use a premium removal spell like Frostbolt or Fireball or Polymorph to remove that questing adventurer. And fr0zen didn't want to just have a dead turn on turn 3 waiting for his heavier drops.
All right, so here's some of the big important questions. Is it worth denying a coin from your opponent? This Tomb Pillager certainly is threatening just by its own body, but the Death Rattle effect is sometimes just as good as hitting your opponent for 5 damage.
Yeah, this is one of the things that can really put a lot of pressure on the Reno Mage. Not only is the Tomb Pillager a sizable body, but there is, as you mentioned, the value of the coin thanks to Gaijin Auctioneer. b787 decides that he doesn't want to use his Polymorph here. He wants to ensure that he has removal for future large minions, and does give fr0zen the coin.
Yes, well, one questing has been dealt with, but there's a second questing adventure and an Edwin Van Cleef. Your opponent playing a questing just out onto the board does make it feel a little suspicious. What does he have to follow up? Does he just throw away one of his win conditions that early?
Yeah, and we actually had a chance to talk to fr0zen, and he mentioned that sometimes he tries to make plays that may conceal information in his hand. That the opponent might expect you to do a certain thing because that's what you would do if, based on the the composition of your hand. If you have this card, you'd use it. And he said that sometimes, especially against top players, he likes to diversify that. It's kind of a poker theory of balancing your range and not giving away too much information.
All right, well, speaking of information, fr0zen has a ton of cards in his hand right now. And, he can deal with his Doomsayer in a multitude of ways. He can take it slow by building up the board, get value off of things like SI7 Agent or even Barnes before it. Or he can go for big Auctioneer setups in the following turns as well. It seems right now that fr0zen has a lot of power coming up in the next couple turns.
Yeah, but unfortunately for him, there's at least the, I was going to say Flame Strike, but it looks like the Firelands Portal. Looks like b787 is holding on to that Flame Strike.
One Doomsayer followed by another Doomsayer to level up a validated Doomsayer, which, in its right is kind of annoying. It's a very powerful minion, but it's a very weak minion that is vulnerable to many spells here.
It's a Doom theme deck he's playing here. But I actually like the keep of the Flame Strike, despite the fact that he had a good opportunity to use it there, because it does mean he has the answer to concealed minions. Most importantly, concealed Auctioneer, which fr0zen is going to have access to this turn.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Right now he doesn't have the Edwin Van Cleef or Questing Adventure, so all this build-up is not actually leading towards too much substantial stuff. And if he ends it with the Conceal, b787 will have the Flame Strike, but an Edwin Van Cleef pickup is massive for fr0zen right now.
Yeah, he has the ability to preparation, then play Van Cleef, then attack, then Conceal, which protects a huge Van Cleef in addition to demanding the Flame Strike to deal with the Auctioneer.
The second Conceal is also a big deal because now b787 has to weigh, do I stall the board because of damage and then try to Polymorph, or if I Flame Strike and disable the Auctioneer? That is the power of the Rogue deck because you set up so many layers of threats. Because even if the Van Cleef does get stalled with a Frost Nova, you still have to the fact that the Auctioneer is going to draw cards, and then your opponent gets follow-up threats.
Yeah, we talked early on about how Conceal is one of the crucial cards in this matchup, and b787 has some of the crucial ones for him. He has that Frost Nova that can delay the incoming damage. He has the Flame Strike, which you can get through the Conceal, but he can only play one of them this turn. He only has 8 mana, so if he Flame Strikes, that's a 14 damage coming in from Van Cleef. And he has not yet set up Ice Block. He has Ice Block and Reno Jackson, but he has to Flame Strike this turn to stop the Auctioneer, or has to Frost Nova to stop the incoming damage, and there's more Auctioneer draws coming.
Yeah, and the Auctioneer had a lot of range too. Remember, there's counterfeit coins in Frozen's deck, so even if he didn't have, specifically the combination of the Tomb Pillager, if he drew into that, he had a lot of range. Love the Gadget Stand setup. Now, b787, he's got some ways to stall. Do you think you can take this damage from the Van Cleef, or is it important just to stall and let your opponent draw cards?
The scary thing is you have to be thinking, okay, what can they do? What's my opponent's sort of max damage range? Does he think that the max damage range, can he do another 12 on top of this? And if he did have, say, Cold Blood Eviscerate, which I believe he does.
Yeah, this is enough damage to just end the game right now. You're just staring at the power of Edwin Van Cleef. Double Eviscerate and Cold Blood's going to wrap up the game very quickly, and Frozen strikes back.
Yeah, very quick answer to b787's first game. We see just kind of a shake of the head, look of exasperation from the Japanese players. Like, oh, guess I'm dead. That Van Cleef, it hit hard. And the match is tied.
Yeah, this is a huge win for Frozen as well, because I do think Reno Mage has a very competitive edge in this matchup against the Miracle Rogues. Yes, b787 has an anti-aggro version of Reno Mage, but you have to consider the fact that a lot of Reno Mage specialists feel like even if your deck isn't perfect, you still have a very good chance to beating it. And if b787 has more chances with Reno Priest, I feel like his chances of winning the series increases that much more.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Frozen was saying that he felt like there were a number of sequences of matchups that could allow b787 to take the match. That if he found the right matchup for his Mage, and I think that was one of the right matchups for his Mage. That Mage deck is going to struggle a lot to beat, say, the combo Druid deck, for instance. So it was very crucial that b787 found a win there, and he did not.
He did not, and it's very painful. But we're just getting started, and Frozen able to strike back. As one of the winningest players in the Hearthstone Tour, Frozen is also one of the world's most respected, but he's yet to make it to a world final, a goal he hopes to achieve here in the Bahamas.
I think it's pretty likely that I win. I'm one of the best players, and I have the lineup to win. I probably grinded one of the hardest last year in terms of games played and tournaments played. I went to Hawaii for vacation, but I didn't go outside and played Hearthstone for 48 hours straight because I needed the points. I got my ranks and I felt really happy. I personally feel like I have had the hardest road in terms of prelims. I had 2 of the top 8 point earners from last year and a few other tough opponents, like Amnesiac.
Possibly the biggest game that we have in this top 8. It's a Swiss rematch between 2 of North America's most high-profile players. And for the Jirax's high roll potential, I imagine. Oh my God, he nails it. Oh my God. Frozen, very well played, is going to be heading to the Bahamas.
Winning this tournament would mean that a lot of my previous success and hard work are validated. So getting here is amazing. I am very confident coming into this tournament.
Frozen sports one of the best records in all of the Blizzard tournaments dating back to the beginning of 2016 with a 61% win rate and climbing. If he's able to continue this path, remember the top 4 goes to the World Championship, guaranteed, with the ability to win a lot of money in the process too, Brian.
Yeah, Frozen's a player who we heard a lot about over the past couple of years. This is his first real appearance at the HCT World Stage, and if you heard in that piece, it means a lot to him, the opportunity to win. But this is going to be tough. This is one of those matchups that he could potentially queue into that gives b787 a very strong chance to win. Dragon Priest is a very solid deck right now, but this is among the commonly played deck. It's absolute worst matchup.
Yeah, you say that, Brian. However, my opinions start to change a little bit depending on the deck list.
It's true.
I think there are some things that do help both make the Reno Warlock matchup worse and the Dragon Priest better simultaneously. One of them, of course, is the fact that b787 is not nearly as threat dense. He doesn't have things like Mountain Giant, for example. Doesn't have a Shadow Flame package with Sylvanas. And that's going to make it really difficult because you don't have that ability to get crazy tempo through Mountain Giant and then face a Shambler.
It's true. b787 is playing a bit of a lower curve version of Reno Lock. He even has the Bloodsail Corsair plus Patches package to give him a stronger matchup against other aggressive decks. But Frozen, this is a lot of air in his hand. That was interesting, his Mulligan decision. He actually threw away 2 different 3-drops as well as a North Shore Cleric. I like mulliganing Cleric in the matchup because it doesn't do that much, but I'm curious as to the decision to mulligan that entire hand.
Well, he does have something to play, as Twilight Whelp is better than nothing. You want to get that early chip damage in, because one of the big power positions that Dragon Priest can get in this matchup is, very similar to Rogue, actually. It's the fact that, or Shaman, even if you remove the Dragon Priest board, they just play a couple more threats, threaten 10 to 15 damage, and you're stuck exactly in the same position. Do you want a Twisting Nether 2 to 3 minions? Not really. But if the Dragon Priest loses the board, Reno Warlock can swing it no matter how bad it gets, because if they get a clear Jiraxxus and get ahead, Dragon Priest won't kill him.
Yeah, one pretty crucial card in the matchup that b787 is not playing, however, is Shadow Flame. And as you mentioned, the Priest's ability to develop large minions and a large number of large minions on the board is really its strength. And generally, the Warlock's strength is to clear that. But b787 has a little bit less of the board clear with the lack of Shadow Flame, so that could swing the pendulum a little bit back toward Frozen.
I'm kind of wondering if b787 still feels relaxed, as he has mentioned to us several times before the tournament started. He got to chat with us just about his mentality on the tournament. This is what he said.
My biggest strength is just being an underdog. I have nothing to lose. I can just do whatever I want. And there's like no one that's gonna blame me for anything I do, so yeah.
And ironically enough, he's actually supposed to be the favorite in this matchup specifically. Reno Warlock does have, at least in theory, an advantage over the Dragon Priest because of how strong their late game is and because of Priest's inability to just directly close the game. But Dragon Priest, with the ability to get onto the board with things like Draconid Operative, not only also bullying the board, but also be able to get that reach by digging deep into the Reno Warlock's deck.
And the Hellfire is one of the things that you're often looking for when you are in the position of the Dragon Priest. One of the things that's most important is finding ways to actually just kill your opponent. Finding ways to get those last points of damage in, which is something that... Oh!
Wow.
As my thought is interrupted by a huge draw for b787. Finds Kazak with Bran already on the board. And going to get some neat little potions here.
Okay, well, one of the big things is making sure that you just don't die to Dragon Priest. So you're looking for area of effect cards, primarily the Fell Bloom of dealing a lot of damage to stuff. Does not find that immediately. And it's going to search for another option. Heart of Fire also could be good removal. But no AoE clear, and you can see b787 a little disappointed with his outcome.
And we actually saw Frozen look up a little bit, and it's important to note these players are playing at a very different stage than they're used to in the past. These players are actually just at eye level with one another, so that kind of information can be crucial to pick up on your opponent's face.
So it looks like, to recap the potions, one of them is to summon a demon, gain armor, another is to deal 5 damage and polymorph a random minion. So he's got some removal, he's got some tempo, even some life gain, which could be useful if he wants to set up for a defensive play.
This is an interesting turn for Frozen here. He does have Dragonfire Potion in his hand, which he could just play to clear off all of b787's board. His minion, of course, is a dragon. It will live. And yeah, he does decide, okay, I'm not going to mess around by trying to kill things individually. He wants to get as much pressure on as possible, which is important. Because the longer the game goes, the more the Warlock gets to life tap, the more likely they find cards like Twisting Nether that can really swing the game back around.
Yeah, and I think if, we're dialing a little bit into Frozen's position here. He knows 2 Kazaka's potions were taken. And if you're very quick, or if your opponent didn't pick fast enough, you can get a read on at least what cost of potion that they have. All the timings are a little bit mind games-ish, every layer you think it could go deeper, but you do want to try to see if you can respond to it, and 5-6 seems to be the sweet spot for stuff. They can't deal Heart of Fire and develop a minion, it takes almost all their turns. So Frozen's saying this Draconid Operative is enough pressure that it's just outside the range of everything Reno Warlock has. 6 health is the sweet spot.
Yeah, interestingly, b787 does have the ability to potentially do 5 damage with Polymorph, but he wants to save that for when there's actually multiple targets in play. He'd love to be able to do 5 to something, polymorph something else, and get to, say, Mortal Coil.
Which, might get complicated with things like Elixir in the hand.
It does get rough, yes.
It does surprisingly get worse as time goes on. Ooh, interesting choices here from Frozen. A couple of AoE, which allows him to respond in different capacities, or reach damage. Fellfire Potion, Hellfire, that's 8 damage from the hand.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I would expect him to take the Fellfire Potion here, simply because it is both the ability to clear off a board where you might get behind, as well as just the ability to finish your opponent off, which is so important against the Warlock.
All right, well, b787 picks up also one of his really important minions in Twilight Drake, but it's very late. You know, traditionally 7 is the Abyssal Enforcer turn, and it happens to remove a Draconid Operative. And we're coming up on the turns where Arena Warlock can start being very competitive onto the board at all points. And fr0zen's going to be aware of that, so be mindful of how these players are layering their threats while keeping responses onto the board and trying to make it complicated for their opponents. You know, b787 doesn't want to have to use Demon Wrath and Hellfire to remove things, and fr0zen's going to keep that in mind, as well as Twisting Nether.
Yeah, and here, crucially, priests are pretty bad at dealing incremental damage. You know, if you have a 6/6 versus a 5-power guy, you're like, all right, I'm good. So b787, you know, despite having a just slightly bigger minion than fr0zen, is actually given the matchup in a fairly dominant position with that 6/6. Shadow of Pain is not what fr0zen was looking for. Shadow of Death would have been fantastic. It looks like he may just be pushing damage to the face and building up a board that can block against this Abyssal Enforcer.
I like it. And also, fr0zen knows the opponent doesn't have a Twisting Nether. This is another side benefit of the Draconid Operative experience, is that you see what your opponent doesn't have in their hand.
Right.
And when he knows that he doesn't have Fellfire or Twisting Nether yet, it's very unlikely his opponent draws it in the next 2 turns. So b787 has to pair together some awkward removals, which he doesn't get to use optimally, which might cost him in the future turns.
And this could still be a really good turn for b787. He could use the Abyssal Enforcer to attack into the 2/7, use the Mortal Coil in his hand, as well as the Kazakus Potion to clear off the entire board effectively. He'll leave just the 1/1 here. Yeah, it's exactly what he does do. Does 5 damage to the Talon Priest, Polymorph, and it will be just a sheep remaining for fr0zen from his board.
Okay, well, a pretty good response here from b787, but now it's Dragon Priest time to respond. There is Hellfire available for an easy clear, and you can actually put another really strong minion with the Azure Drake, or maybe the Twilight Guardian, depending on how fr0zen feels like he wants to layer his threats. Remember, his opponent still hasn't used Shadow Bolt yet, so Azure Drake is a little bit vulnerable, but it is more mana efficient, which also helps because fr0zen now has finally dug into the Shadow Word Death, which is something that actually is very convenient because over the course of multiple turns, b787 has seen fr0zen not respond with the Shadow Word Death when it was very convenient to do so. Maybe that ends up being in fr0zen's benefit because now he actually does have it and b787 might not play around.
Very clean turn, though, from b787. Finds the max-sized Twilight Drake and Shadow Bolt along with Life Tap, perfectly expending all of his mana. And now fr0zen, he still has that Onyxia that he picked up earlier from the Historian. Powerful threat here, and yeah, it's finally time for the Daughter of Deathwing to come down. And that is pretty scary, at least, for b787. Finds Twisting Nether, though, so he can answer whatever he wants.
Yeah, I mean, Demon Wrath doesn't feel like it gets a lot of value against a deck that primarily prides itself on putting high health minions, so this actually seems like a good opportunity. But what are you going to do beyond that? You know, you see b787 doesn't exactly have cleanest removal, and this Twilight Drake, while it's great stats, doesn't actually contest the Onyxia body herself without cards like Blast Crystal Potion and Siphon Soul, direct removal from the Arena Warlock.
Yeah, there are a very limited number of spells that can deal with individual large minions in the Warlock deck. So often as the Priest, you're trying to figure out, okay, what should I be playing into this in order to force my opponent to use their resources in a way that they don't want to. This does at least force the AoE out of b787 and still also demands one of those single target removal effects.
Yeah. And a lot of times, if it's too complicated, just don't even bother trying to get optimal trades. Just try to set up roadblocks and make your opponent have to deal with your board, which is something that b787 is probably thinking about right now. Instead, he actually pivots and plays Second Ray Bruiser immediately to protect his Twilight Drake. And I actually don't blame him at all because Second Ray Bruiser, another problematic minion for Priest, a 4/5 taunt.
Yeah, being guaranteed to absorb the, effectively guaranteed to absorb that 8 attack hit is very significant. Priest is very poorly set up to deal with 4 attack minions. Shadow of Pain and Shadow of Death hitting 3 and below and 5 and up.
Another pretty big moment here from fr0zen. Yes, he's playing a Dragon Priest, so it was likely that he had a Dragon. But if he didn't, then all of his Dragon activations, which he risked by tossing on Onyxia, wouldn't actually be available to him. fr0zen does have a way to answer, again, with Fellfire Potion. Is this worth using it right now? I mean, you can grab Tempo immediately, but it feels like you can also save that card for later as well. What do you suggest here, Brian?
there has to at least be some consideration given to just playing Felfire Potion and then playing the Twilight Guardian. This is a matchup that's pretty tough overall, and often when you're playing in a matchup where you are an underdog, it's best to take risks in situations where you have the opportunity. I think if I were in fr0zen's shoes, there's a very good chance I just play Felfire, attack face with my Onyxia, and play my Twilight Guardian to try to keep things alive.
Oh my goodness.
Just want another hit.
Okay, Holy Nova I was looking as a possibility, but doesn't seem like it has anything good to combo with. And fr0zen did not actually get the taunt.
Oh, and we see a shake of the head.
Oh,
I think he may not have realized that was his last dragon. His face literally goes into his palm as he realizes what happened.
Yeah, he was running out of time. The rope was kind of putting fr0zen, nudging him, saying, you gotta make a play, you gotta make a play. And he forgot about the dragon synergy, and fr0zen, devastated by his misplay in this position. b787, can he capitalize? He's just going straight up for Draxus.
Yeah, and now just a 2-attack minion, no taunts. That board was not protected by the Guardian as fr0zen had hoped. And b787 is definitely a strong spot.
Okay, well, it's not over yet. fr0zen does have some cards that might be able to bail him out. I'm looking at Nethersmith Historian as being one of those cards that can get fr0zen out of the situation. And he finds some pretty good answers. Ysera is a very big threatening minion. Can't play it this turn, unfortunately. But the important thing is that he has a dragon stabilizing. Sometimes you feel like you don't have a dragon to anchor you. Bookworm needs to be played, but he also is a dragon himself to activate other cards. So fr0zen's not out of it just yet.
The Bloodsuck Corsair, the draw for b787, not what he's looking for in this matchup by any means. But now he's Jiraxis. He has a lot of tools to continue to push his advantage every single turn, thanks to the hero power summoning Infernals. And yeah, this will find patches with the Corsair here.
Oh, that's right. We haven't seen patches all game long. That's huge. Being able to protect your board and making sure Dragon Priest doesn't get that extra range.
And this is what we're talking about in terms of the Dragon Priest being poor at dealing damage to the opponent's face. You can't really finish him off unless he picks up, well, there's one thing, the Corruptor. So he could potentially, say, Felfire Potion and hope to draw a second Corruptor to finish the game the following turn. Looks like he's just going to play a reactive turn here. Yeah, he's going to go ahead and Death, Pain, Corruptor the face. That does put b787 down to just 7 life. So if he doesn't have a easy way to deal with the Corruptor, he is running the risk of just getting killed next turn. But there's Reno Jackson.
Reno Jackson coming out for b787, and not just because of the heal, but also because the minion body is so hard to deal with. And b787 is looking for ways to kill his opponent. He has that Power of Overwhelming and a Defender of Argus. That is barely enough to get over the hump. And fr0zen doesn't have anything to do except establish his dragons, which means b787 is going to end this game.
Yeah, he's got lethal damage with Power of Overwhelming. He's got 10 on the board, 3 from his fists.
And the Defender of Argus, just for good measure. That's going to wrap it up, and fr0zen is going to roll his eyes because he knows there was a window of opportunity. If the Twilight Guardian was protecting his Onyxia, what could have happened, Brian? It felt like there wasn't a safe opportunity for b787.
Yeah, I mean, just look at fr0zen's face there. He is clearly, under some strain from the realization that he did make that error. And, he is a player who has had a ton of success in a lot of tournaments throughout the years, but this is his first time playing on the world stage.
Yeah, and you have to also wonder, there's less and less room for fr0zen to mess up at this position. Even though it's just still game 3 and this is a best of 7, it can still go the distance. fr0zen doesn't have that much more room to fall. However, I do feel like the other decks are more vulnerable to his lineup. Reno Priest is the big question mark. We've seen players get really far, like in the Americas Championship playoffs, we had Watt from South America go really far, and then his Reno Priest end up getting swept because he just was not able to get a win from it. So no matter how far b787 goes, you have to wonder, can the Reno Priest get him over the hump?
Yeah, and also, that Reno Mage is very likely to struggle against some of what fr0zen has available as well. Tends to be quite disadvantaged against that Dragon Priest, like we just saw. And there's, still the rest of the decks are not any pushover for it either.
Certainly, this best 7 is just getting started. We have a big match coming up next. Can't wait to see what's going to happen.
Greetings, my friends, and welcome to the Bahamas as the Hearthstone Winter Championship continues. X-Hope versus Stanudachi.
This is a live shot of X-Hope as you can see him getting ready for his match, as well as being surrounded by his fellow China players, being able to get some advice. They're a very close, tight-knit unit. They help each other a lot. They joke with each other. Practically brothers at this point.
Yeah, you know, we've seen a lot of the players who may not have known each other really coming in, kind of form camaraderie with a lot of the other players here. You know, we've actually been kind of hanging out with some of the players. We were playing some Werewolf in the hot tub the other night, so definitely a crowd having a lot of fun.
What happens in the Bahamas hot tub at the Malia Nassau stays in the hot tub of the Malia in Nassau. Please, Brian, please.
But yeah, we are in this match. fr0zen there, you know, definitely looking kind of nervous, I think.
Yeah, you know, we'll see. I mean, we're going to go to Mage versus the Druid. Now, this is the only Druid in the entire tournament that is not going to be J Druid. We have a Malagos one-turn kill burst deck. This is a combo deck at its core, and fr0zen loves this deck. He thinks this deck is quite possibly his favorite and one of the most strongest decks that's in the meta. He actually thinks it's very underrated.
Yeah, and this is a deck that is particularly strong in this matchup. Interestingly, right now, Reno Mage tends to struggle against most Druid decks that are out there. You know, Jade Druid tends to kind of just make too many big minions for them to be able to deal with. But this one can make not only a bunch of big minions in a single turn, but also do a ton of damage in that turn as well.
fr0zen having a good hand too. One Mire Keeper in his deck lands it. Of course, that was following a Wild Growth draw too. So fr0zen's got a lot of ramp coming up, and that's something you don't want to see as the Reno Mage, because you're stuck usually just being very reactive. And if Druid's not playing anything, and you're just being reactive, you're just going to be hero powering his face.
Yeah, we see a quick choice from that Raven Idol from fr0zen, picks up a Lunar Visions. This is a matchup where, like you mentioned, just looking to ramp out, looking to draw some cards, trying to just get to the critical mass of Aviana, Kun, and Malagos. But we do see the very key card in b787's hand, the Dirty Rat. That is kind of his one real way to disrupt that full from-hand combo.
Yes, and so he's going to have to pay very close attention to how fr0zen's playing, if he can. I mean, fr0zen's going a million miles an hour compared to his previous series.
Yeah, roll the eyes there from b787 as yet another ramp effect comes out from fr0zen. He's going to have 6 mana next turn. He could just Emperor here if he wants.
Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with that. Because, yes, you want to save it for a big hand, but one, your opponent has to deal with Emperor, and two, you discount things like Malagos, which playing a Malagos pretty fast out if your opponent doesn't have the proper response with Polymorph.
If you get to deal with Emperor, b787 cannot do it.
Oh, you're right.
He has a handful of minions and an ice block. That Emperor is going to remain on the board and discount even more cards for fr0zen next turn.
I'm thinking of a possibility, such as if Azure Drake pulled a Forbidden Flame, but it's not possible, you're right. And b787 is stuck in an awkward spot. And even worse, you know, the situational cards that he brought to the tournament, such as Harrison Jones and the Reno Mage, fr0zen doesn't even have a Warrior in his lineup. He's the only player not to bring Warrior, or even Shaman. This guy's crazy.
Yeah, fr0zen actually, we talked to him earlier, and he was saying that he had done like a lot of studying of the brackets and trying to figure out who he could get paired with based on his seeding. And b787 was actually someone who he kind of targeted. He was like, okay, I think he's going to do something very similar to what he did in the playoffs and bring a anti-Pirate Warrior lineup. So he didn't want to bring Pirate Warrior off or at all, and was seriously paid off. Speaking of paid off, this Emperor plus double card draw effect, if he wants to use the coin, that's going to pay off in spades.
Yeah, he also has very clean removal and swipe to very efficiently remove and push damage, forcing your opponent to have Blizzard, Volcanic Potion, or Arcane Blast to remove your Emperor again. Discounting Malagos to 7 mana with a follow-up of Innervate and Coin to give him the ability to have a wide range of spells. This is looking like the dream for Druid.
Yeah, fr0zen is still lacking the components of the one-turn kill, being able to set up the Aviana plus Kun to play Malagos and then a ton of spells. But as you mentioned, discounted to 7, you know, he can certainly play a number of spells alongside it in the future here.
Yeah, you can see that fr0zen not really phased, even if Doomsayer makes him fall behind the tempo. fr0zen actually talks about this a lot. We had a chance to sit down with him prior to the tournament.
If I fall behind in a match, I think it's important to not get tilted, stop, think, play your turns out slower, and try to regroup.
Wise words from any aspiring Hearthstone player. You have 70 seconds a turn. you know, sometimes you gotta take it, especially if you're playing a complicated deck like the Malygos one-turn kill with Aviana and Kun the Forgotten King. There's a lot of crazy stuff you can do in this deck.
Yeah, the fr0zen, he's still playing pretty quickly. It's very clear that this is a deck with which he is incredibly familiar. You know, he is not really taking time to the rope for any of these turns, despite how complex the deck may be.
B787 draws Reno Jackson, which by all means everyone knows Reno Jackson, one of the most iconic cards in the current state of the metagame, but not that useful in this matchup because your opponent is going to go for everything in one turn, and Reno Jackson can only heal you to 30 health maximum.
Reno is still pretty valuable in this matchup when he does have Ice Block, and we see Ice Block in his hand as well. So B787 can potentially set up so he's able to withstand the one-turn kill, and then if he does have, say, Reno plus a Polymorph to remove the Malygos the following turn, it can certainly help him get back into the game, but it can still be tough.
Yeah, because a lot of times the ideal combo is you're playing Aviana first, and then Kun, and then you have this giant board. B787's playing Archmage and Tinnitus for tempo to just try to stabilize. And fr0zen has kind of like a build-your-own Malygos crew here. He's the motley crew of spell damage, where he's got a lot of ability to remove this Tinnitus any way he wants.
Yeah, he's got 3 spell damage already, so those are 5-point living roots. But worth noting that because he is playing the Malygos combo deck, he very much wants to hold on to all those burn spells because he does have Malygos in his hand. He may just use the living roots here plus a minion to kill this. Yeah, it looks like he's going to living roots plus attack and maybe attack it into his face as well.
Aviana, part of the combination. And with Aviana, you actually don't need Innervate really anymore. I mean, you already used a lot of the spells too. I imagine that fr0zen's going to try to go for the dominant position on the board with, because that's where Reno Mage struggles in many matchups. Right. You look at Dragon Priest, you look at J Druid. What do they all have in common is that Reno Mage can't remove all of their threats at one time. Flame Strike's usually their best. So if you're able to go for a huge swing with Aviana, Kun, Malygos, sometimes that's enough.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't need to actually kill them in one turn. You just put so much stuff in play at one turn that unless they have a Kazakus potion, they essentially have no way to deal with it.
B787 can't even deal with these Drakes very efficiently. He's got to fireball one of them and just got to let the other cope. Maybe this is the timing to start considering Dirty Rat in some capacity, but the risks are very high. You can't remove everything. You only have a fireball. So yes, you can remove perhaps Aviana or Kun.
All right. Oh. All right, it is Aviana. So that does protect B787 from the full combo, but Malygos by itself is still extremely strong. There's no polymorph available to B787 right now. Which a lot of burn.
Hold on,
how much fr0zen?
How much damage is this even right now?
Yeah, he has +2 spell damage already, so he'll have 7 spell damage along with the Malygos. He has Living Roots Moonfire that he can actually just get to face right now. So that's what 3 plus 21. It's 24 damage, I think. I'm adding it 3 times because I'm thinking of 3 living roots. So it's actually 3 plus 14, so it's 17 damage.
If he with Feral Rage too, to help him get past Taunt or add damage, he might be able to piece it together. It's actually really tricky. He's just going for a Raven Idol immediately. Maybe he can find another Moonfire. Mulch, does that help him too? Because I mean, he's got a lot of damage to follow up. He might not have enough mana to do it. Okay, so Mulch is 3, so he removes the Taunt, goes face for 8. He has 13 damage with the removal spell, so that's 21, 22 with the hero power.
The problem is that if he mulches, he still doesn't have mana to play Malygos in the spells, because mulch costs
4, 7, 8. Oh, right, he used the Innervate. If he had the Innervate, he could.
You could just take Starfire down the 2/6, and just send both Drakes to face. Okay, he's just getting in. As much as he can right here.
Feral Rage actually might be the difference, though, because the living rooms actually counts as an extra 1.
Math's hard, okay?
Was that fast enough? Did he get it all off? Oh. 3 damage to face. Oh no! Did he play Feral Rage and not attack?
Well, he actually was 1 damage off, and he's 1 damage off.
Oh, he did get it. He was 1 damage off, and fr0zen just barely not getting there. And guess what?
God, we were saying Reno Jackson not necessarily huge in the matchup, but when you miscount and you're 1 damage off lethal, it is huge.
Oh man, fr0zen really trying to go for the opportunity to win the game. And B787 going to be able to survive by the skin of his teeth. But the problem still persists. You know, Azure Drake still ends up getting that damage in. But this was a crucial turn that fr0zen has fumbled here. Once again, potentially throwing the matchup away.
Yeah, this is, definitely pretty clear that the pressure is getting to fr0zen. And we see, his reaction to that Reno Jackson. He is crushed.
Well, okay, well, let's not lose all hope yet, because remember, b787 doesn't have a way to deal with Malagos.
It's true.
Straight up.
I'm saying he's emotionally crushed. Not crushed in the game just yet, but...
Sure, absolutely. You know, fr0zen contemplating if he wants to go for the phase, because it is 9 damage, but I think you're on the minion damage plan here. fr0zen even going to forgo the Wild Growth. Knows that he doesn't have that many cards in his deck, only 7 remaining, and he's going to maximize his damage every single turn.
And I think what this really highlights is that this is just such a high-pressure situation for these players. This is the first time many of these players have been on stage in this international competition. You know, we're here in the Bahamas. These players are mostly used to playing from home, maybe playing on stages that are at least a bit smaller than this one.
Yeah, well, you know, the Malagos hasn't died yet, but both swites have been used, both Wraths have been used, both Living Roots have been used. There's only, I think, a Moonfire remaining in fr0zen's deck. He's going to draw pretty much the remainder of it. Gadget and Auctioneer might just be minions. Fandral is just a minion at this point. fr0zen needs to optimize his damage. The good thing, too, is that Reno Mage has almost no cards remaining. fr0zen's just going to have to do this the good old-fashioned way. Classic Hearthstone, minion to the face.
Just grinding him down.
With, you know, also the fact that if b787 can't remove all the minions, he's just going to get pressured out. He gets a Blizzard. Blizzard can help stall.
It looks like b787 is raising his hand to talk to one of the admins, perhaps. Looks like maybe a technical issue that he's looking to deal with. We're trying to figure out what's going on here. But yeah, as you mentioned, you know, this is a very difficult situation for fr0zen to get out of with very few cards remaining in his deck. You know,
3.
Yeah, b787 does pick up the Blizzard, and he could stall the minion damage at least, heal himself back up a bit with Refreshment Vendor, but fr0zen does not have much remaining.
All right, well, it looks like we're going to take an administrator to see what's going to happen. But, you know, fr0zen, if he just runs out of threats, think of it very similar to how Miracle Rogue versus Reno Mage ends up transpiring. You know, guess what? Mage still has half your deck remaining, and you have 0 cards, so they're going to win the fatigue game even if you're hero powering them every single turn, especially if they have any taunts or heals remaining in the deck. So it could be one of those situations where if we're getting to that late stage of the game, fr0zen's out of options. Doesn't seem like we're being able to get b787 into the game, though. This is quite unfortunate because I feel like he was almost there. Not guaranteed, because we actually see fr0zen draw an Ancient of War. This was a really close game, Brian.
Yeah, you know, I'm really, really sad that we're not going to see the conclusion of this, but we are going to get into the game once again momentarily once we figure out what the technical issues are. But yeah, I mean, that was, you know, just a look on fr0zen's face in those points where he just realized that he had made just a drastic error. You know, 1 damage off lead, he thought he had it countered out, and you can see, you know, he's trying to make these difficult decisions in a very high-pressure situation.
Yep, certainly. We do want to point out that you know, there is some interesting matchups too still to happen. You know, one of those big worries about the lineup from b787 is the Reno Priest, and we see that following this deck, we still have Freeze Mage. We still have, you know, another Dragon Priest that has to get a win from fr0zen. So even past the Malagos Druid, it's still not exactly easy going, but he has to be feeling more confident. As the series develops, I think fr0zen is going to be able to still be favored throughout the rest of the series. But if b787 was able to take this game, I feel like 3 chances with Reno Priest, surely you can take down one of them.
It's, you know, the Reno Priest deck specifically that b787 has in his lineup is very unusual too. Most Reno Priest lists that we tend to see are usually Dragon Reno Priest based, and his is much more sort of the tricky combo base with Circle of Healing. He has Flash Heal. He has you know, even Shadowward Horror plus Pint-Sized Potions. So, you know, I don't even know what the matchups for this deck look like.
The big combo. Shadowward Horror, of course, a card many laughed at, but with Pint-Sized Potion, perhaps you can pull off some amazing board clears. You know, fr0zen also had Kuhn the Forgotten King, something that's actually living to his title. We didn't mention it for the rest of the games. But if he was able to get some minion pressure, I actually feel like fr0zen maybe could have closed that game too. I was thinking b787 was favored, but fr0zen had back-to-back threats.
Yeah, it was not at all clear who was going to take this. Could have gone either way, and we are going to end up restarting momentarily to once again go into the Druid versus Mage matchup.
Yeah, and you know, you can't necessarily guarantee that the opening hands are going to play out the same. fr0zen had a really good draw and ramp. b787 didn't have much, but he was able to find removal for most of the stuff and stay alive at the whim of fr0zen. fr0zen was off by 1 in his calculations, and b787 healed back with Reno.
Yeah, I mean, just look at fr0zen's face. You know, he's very clearly shaken by what transpired in that game. And you know, while maybe that was a game he was not going to win. He has to be shaken going back into that same matchup, and okay, I messed it up last time. Can I get it right this time? Now that we're playing again,
pressure stacks. If you've competed in tournaments, Brian, a lot of us in the commentary just have also competed as well, and the pressure gets to you, and it's also something that exponentially grows. You make one mistake, you're stuck thinking about it, and then it kind of puts you off kilter, and then you start making more mistakes, and then that starts getting in your head. How do you compose yourself?
I mean, like actually fr0zen incidentally said, you fall behind, you have to just play slowly. You have to take your time and just take it one game at a time. And like you mentioned, lots of players watching at home, they may think like, oh, these are easy decisions, but it's very different when you're on the stage. It's very different when you are the one who has all that pressure on you at the championship.
Yeah, and I know fr0zen well enough to at least be able to make a guess that he's trying to keep track of a lot of things. What cards his opponent's been playing the entire time, what threats he has to be mindful of, what his deck consists of too, so there's a lot of calculations going on. fr0zen seems to have a relatively similar start, Wild Growth and Nourish being kept. fr0zen actually has famously said amongst his player group circles that he keeps Nourish in every single matchup possible. Not exactly sure if that's what you want to be doing at home, kids. Don't try it in every matchup. But hey, he even picks up the Mire Keeper, so at least for him, things look to be similar. b787, being able to at least have a turn 1 play with the Babbling Book. So things definitely have similar, but still a little bit different.
Wait, and a counterspell off the Babbling Book for b787. That's against a very specific spell combo heavy deck. That could be a very powerful card. If he's able to counter a Nourish, for instance, that could be a huge swing.
So here's one of the big differences in the previous game that we've seen compared to this one, is that b787 actually has minions to play early on.
Yes.
Before, he had a Doomsayer that he just wanted to time. He had a Dirty Rat, not really. So the important thing is if he's able to stay ahead on the board and pressure, then maybe force Druid to remove instead of going face with the combos. And if they don't have the removal, maybe fr0zen will be in a position to just get burned out of the game. Mage can do that sometimes.
I have to say, if I were in b787's spot, I would have snapped Counterspell there. I would have played the Counterspell because there is very little that your opponent's looking to do other than Nourish in these turns. And if you're able to stop one of the key cards like Nourish in the matchup, or even slow them down, what is fr0zen going to play here that you're afraid of that isn't some sort of card draw spell? I guess he could potentially have a Raven Idol and then still play a Nourish because he does have 6 mana. But b787 decides to keep his pressure going and protect it with the Arcane Blast.
Well, fr0zen does have opportunities to draw cards or ramp. He is a big fan of ramping crystals. He actually talks about this all the time.
All right, and that's what he does.
Yeah, he does tend to argue a lot with his teammates in the Trinity Series prior to this tournament, saying, crystals, you want the crystals, you always want the crystals, especially if you have double nerfs. You can draw cards, Auctioneer can draw cards, Thalnos cycles itself. So surely you have enough ability to dig deep into your deck.
Yeah, I think the fact that not only does he have double Nourish, but also has an Auctioneer, so he's very easily able to leverage that extra mana moving forward. But if b787 is able to catch the second Nourish, perhaps, with a counterspell, that could be huge. There is the Moonfire, though, so fr0zen does have the ability to try and play around it by firing off the Moonfire initially.
Oh, wow, this is a pretty big
Boom.
moment.
Counter
spell, and that's something that you can't really play necessarily around. There's so many range of secrets. That's pretty much the only spell that'd be bad, and fr0zen, once again, stuck in a tight spot. That Nourish was paramount to his strategy. This entire combo deck is predicated on the fact that you can draw enough cards. He needs to save this Moonfire with the Gadsden Auctioneer. This is how desperate he is. He needs to hit his Azure Drakes, and maybe even the Wild Growth position. That's how desperate he is.
Yeah, and under normal circumstances, like we mentioned, you ramp first, then you draw, and now the counterspell from the Babbling Book of all things does leave fr0zen kind of starved for resources.
Well, I mean, with Gadsden Auctioneer, Living Roots, and Moonfire, there actually is a lot of ways to cycle right now. So fr0zen being able to get back onto the train. Would you even Wrath cycle your Gadsden Auctioneer? Like, do damage to your own Auctioneer so you can draw? I feel like that's a fr0zen thing to do.
There's certainly an argument for it. Wrath is the least impactful of your cards in your hand. You could play Feral Rage, but you're just getting some damage to the face here. And looks like that will be what he decides to do. Wants to save Wrath for later. Just going to fire off Moonfire to cycle. So, yeah, does get a bit of a refill of his hand. picks up 3 cards, actually, kind of like he nourished.
It's just not the same. You know, fr0zen would have had 6, 7 cards in his hand by now, prepping for an Emperor Thor's hand. And b787 getting bailed out by the Babbling Book spell. And now has a couple of options to remove. Forbidden Flame is one of the more clunky cards. Ferocipul's very efficient, helps you play the Doomsayer as well. You know, a bunch of things here available to b787.
Yeah, he's certainly going to kill this Auctioneer. Exactly how he decides to do it. He could play Doomsayer and just use the Forbidden Flame. That does contest fr0zen's next turn, which has to be at least kind of appealing because fr0zen has so much mana that he could easily drop a gigantic threat.
Yeah, but at the same time, if your opponent removes the Doomsayer, deals with it, and plays a big board behind it, you know, do you have to? You only have Frostbolt to remove a 5 health minion, for example. Sure. So b787's keeping the Forbidden Flame as options. Chooses not to play the Doomsayer. fr0zen, desperate for something. He probably wants to look for another nourish of some kind. Okay.
Yes, Swipe's not bad. Swipe is a tool that he can use to combo with Malagos for extra damage. It can be some removal to protect some minions on the board.
Yep. And discounting Swipe is actually a pretty big deal. You know, helps you maybe assemble the combo that much faster and squeeze everything in.
It means that you can Malagos into Innervate Swipe as opposed to not having that opportunity as well.
That is true. That is true. But I mean, you know, b787 has to be feeling like he's still got things under control for now. Druid's not holding that many cards. You do have spot removal for this. When is the time to drop the Doomsayer? You know, when do you feel like this Doomsayer is good? Because your opponent has 10 mana, so it's not exactly that he can tell you what kind of hand he has, ramping up to certain turns. Traditionally, the way you kind of time Doomsayer is the best expected turn from your opponent. On turn 4 against the Rena Warlock, for example, disrupt their Twilight Drake and their Mountain Giant by playing Doomsayer turn 3. It's not as clear at this point in the game.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this is tough because, you know, b787 does have the tools to remove this. I think he may be debating whether he wants to play that Doomsayer first. Exactly what tools he decides to use. I would expect to see at least just the removal with the Forbidden Flame, because he wants to save Polymorph for Malagos.
I mean, that's an ideal scenario. You might have to use it on Ancient of War or Kuth the Forgotten King if it starts getting too bad. I mean, Innervate's just kind of a dead draw here for fr0zen. Double Swipe. Can't even Wrath Cycle because his opponent hasn't been playing minions.
He could cycle in his own minion, and we may see that. It is very, very important for him to dig up and find enough of those cards.
He's filling so much mana. Although at the same time, you know, Azure Drake, a little bit problematic to remove. b787 doesn't have a clean kill. I think b787 is saving Doomsayer for an actual follow-up. Because remember, he's actually just hit his 8th Mana Crystal versus fr0zen's been having 10 for quite some time.
Yeah.
So he's probably feeling like, maybe I set up Doomsayer if I draw Alexstrasza. Maybe if I have Antonidas. I play it beforehand. I have Frostnova Doomsayer as well to really make things complicated for Druid if they build up a big board. Say they go for a big Aviana turn, they have no cards in the hand. So this is probably what he's trying to save for, but he's picking up just really okay stuff, like the Refreshment Vendor. That's not too intimidating. Druid can remove that in 1 card. Wow. Blizzard on just an Azure Drake.
Well, this is a matchup where you're not really taking a ton of minion-based damage as it is. You know, Blizzard Ping here can set up for just ping the following turn. And he didn't really have you know, a great ability to clear that with anything super... Feral Rage. So Swipe, Feral Rage is 14. Still pretty far away from lethal damage here for fr0zen.
And you know that your opponent's been holding 1 card to the mulligan for a while. Is it actually time to go for the burst? And probably not, because you know you could set yourself up for failure. Your opponent also hasn't really played too much behind you know, his turns. His opponent's just Blizzard and Hero Power. That's very weak. It has to be something like Reno Jackson.
Right. And fr0zen is a player who pays a lot of attention to the positioning of cards in players' hands. He talks about how he spends actually an hour to 2 hours a day practicing hand tracking. You know, he'll keep a note of what cards were in the player's mulligan, how many of those cards that they have played, whether how many of their cards they mulliganed, what cards they do in the mid game. You know, there's just a ton of mental processing going on, tracking all that information.
What to do?
B787 is also worried about dying, perhaps.
Yeah.
He's saying if he has Malygos and a couple of combos cards, such as the second Moonfire, Living Roots, I might die. So he's just playing Reno Jackson for 13. I think that's what fr0zen wanted to do.
Yeah, I think that fr0zen, definitely. Ooh, the fr0zen, a nice draw with that Wrath. Finally getting very good value from it.
Maybe even more, depending if he's able to hit something very nicely here. Oh, another Innervate. These Innervates are just so useless, and fr0zen's starting to feel desperate. I feel like his hand has always been on fr0zen's face since the beginning of this game.
That's interesting. fr0zen could have, after that Wrath, swiped face and then punched the Reno.
Oh, you're right.
So he ended up basically doing 2 less damage to b787 to prevent damage to himself.
Yeah, I think he's frazzled. He's not really been able to be efficient in every single corner, and missing that damage could end up being the punishing difference.
Yeah, I mean, most of his card draw's gone. He's already used both of his nourishes. He's used his auctioneer. He really has. Well, there's card draw.
Oof. That's really impactful. Actually, let's see. He's got to think about what he wants to Wrath.
Yeah.
He probably wants to Innervate Swipe at this point. Most likely swipe the Harrison Jones, so that way he can keep his minions.
Yeah, this gives him maximum value of everything here.
He's also playing pretty fast at this point. I think fr0zen just wants to get this game over with because he knows that he's had chances. b787's got more stall, though. Right now he's got Fireball, Forgotten Torch, Hero Power, and I'm okay with that. I feel like as b787, you just got to remove the Druid's threats because this has transitioned to a game of just fatiguing your opponent out of resources. Your opponent's already using swipes. He's using Moonfires to draw. His ability to deal with to try to combo you down is reduced because he only has 3 cards in the hand. I'm feeling pretty good if I'm in b787's position.
He's also just used a lot of his burst potential, too. We've seen those 2 swipes be used. One of them was picked up off of a Raven Idol.
Okay.
So, there's still some remaining damage available.
Interesting.
The additional swipe and the Living Roots.
I mean, I
There's the other swipe.
Kind of be scared of Ancient of War in this position.
Yeah.
Prioritizing the Azure Drake when your opponent's already used so much removal damage. But fr0zen just is going to have to hope that fr0zen gets a lot in here. At the same time, I can see why b787 did what he did. He wants to try and maximize his card's potential. Volcanic Potion's pretty weak against a combo deck like this. So try to optimize your removal damage.
Picks up an Azure Drake, so not really a great opportunity to deal with this using any easy resources. He'd have to Fireball to get rid of the fr0zen, but he did just see the fr0zen didn't represent a big threat, at least that turn. I believe it is actually just the Ancient of War that's remaining. Oh, going on the aggressive. It's Alexstrasza time.
Oh my goodness. There's Aviana and Kuhn the Forgotten King for maximum value. The dream, Brian.
I think he may even just Aviana. Yeah, well, oh yeah, he does have the fr0zen. I didn't even notice that. Get it all. But unfortunately, the max value is pretty small because he just has an Innervate in a Living Roots here. So all that extra 10 mana crystal is going to do is let him Hero Power.
Yeah, I guess you might as well just have played it for 10 armor gain. Nothing really benefit. Kazakis coming into the hand. b787 already had options with the Frost Nova, but now he can just try to find the right answers over 2 turns. He has Kazakis and Frost Nova, find a really good potion, and really try to figure out a way he can just remove every single threat from fr0zen's deck until he has nothing remaining and win through the fatigue.
Yeah, he's looking at his options here. He definitely wants to remove Aviana because there is certainly the threat of the Malygos coming down and those remaining cards being burn spells, and he's fairly low life. Though actually, perhaps, even if it is, say, burn spell, Malygos, or rather burn spell plus Malygos, he doesn't really have enough damage to actually kill b787. Yeah, it will be extra removal turn. No Kazakis, just wants to play maximum tempo here.
Okay, well, Living Roots and Moonfire is actually pretty interesting because maybe fr0zen can pair together a way to kill his opponent if he draws Malygos off the top. You might be tempted to use Living Roots to remove Alexstrasza here, but you gotta stick to your win conditions. He's got 3 damage plus 10, 13, 14 with Hero Power. He'd be 1 off if he draws Malygos next turn. And remember the 2 damage he missed earlier in the game? After Reno Jackson, he would actually put himself in a position to top deck Malygos and win the game.
And there's
Assuming
no armor here for b787.
I don't know. I think b787's firmly won the board.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't even really matter at this point. Also going to remove Fandral. So fr0zen's going to be... Oh no, he's going to be in a position where he can't actually win.
If he had swiped the face that turn and cleared off the Reno Jackson with his hero power rather than swiping Reno Jackson, this would be lethal damage.
But he still has 1 turn, or unless there's enough damage from the Mage. 8, 11, 15, plus the Firelance Portal is 21, 22. That's enough. b787 picks up the Roaring Torch as well. Insurance just in case. What a turn of events here as fr0zen has thrown an opportunity to tie up the series, and b787 takes a commanding 3-1 lead.
Yeah, and this is a matchup where b787 said, I've got no shot. I'm done. And fr0zen said, I'm going to win. I'm the huge favorite here. And now he's down 3 games to 1.
The house of cards is crumbling. fr0zen has had many opportunities to commandingly take a position. Remember, he feels like he's super confident. We thought he was confident. b787 said he was the massive underdog too.
And it is clear that the pressure has been getting to fr0zen. We see, this game 3 where he plays the Twilight Guardian. Head goes straight to his hand as he realizes I didn't have a dragon, and his board just gets cleared here. He was hoping to protect that Onyxia, but instead he just threw that Twilight Guardian away.
Oh my goodness. He also miscounted lethal this turn as well. He tried to go for a huge kill and was 1 damage off. fr0zen has just been, the 1 damage has just been haunting him this entire series. You can just look at his exasperation as he thought he had it, but he didn't.
Just look at, he is clearly just crushed here. And then once again, and this play was not necessarily strictly wrong. The, playing into the Nourish into a disguised secret. This isn't, a mistake. This is a calculation. He could have tried to test for Counterspell here, but chose to just fire off the Nourish and then spent the entire game just sort of sitting there, really choked on resources, didn't have what he needed to piece together his combo.
Yeah, but in the end, that shouldn't be the moment that he's thinking about.
Right.
He's probably thinking about how he was frazzled and he didn't swipe for that extra damage. He decided to overkill a minion for no reason, other than to just accept the fact that he missed damage.
And it's even a game where we saw him just load up a Feral Rage and go face, sort of in the middle of the game. It was clear that he was prioritizing getting that face damage in, but in that 1 turn, he went the other way, and it ended up costing him huge.
Game number 5. Match point for b787, who is the massive underdog. A lot of people also put their faith in fr0zen for choose your champion.
I did.
They're starting to get nervous.
He was my champion.
You did that. And we're down to the Reno Priest. This is the X factor. fr0zen is extremely confident that Reno Priest will just get destroyed, even if the series ends up in the worst position possible. Is he justified in that belief? I think so, but I think the series is blown wide open, as we've clearly seen in the past few games.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think that, looking back to the Asia-Pacific playoff, where b787 was the overwhelming favorite, and he struggled in that position. And now, fr0zen, thought to be the overwhelming favorite, he's been struggling. And as b787 said then, all the pressure's on the person everyone expects to win. And now, clearly, the pressure's on fr0zen.
Right, and you know what? I don't think b787's done anything egregious at all. I think he's actually played very solidly, understands what his deck can and can't do, and it's almost as if he's just playing in a very normal pace, and fr0zen's the one trying to frantically catch up and make sure that he's not falling behind himself.
This deck, though, I don't know what this deck can and can't do. The Reno Priest deck from b787, not a version that I've played with. He's playing a very unusual version of a very unusual deck. He's playing not only Reno Priest, but he's playing Pint-Sized Potion. He's playing Shadow Word Horror. He's not playing sort of Dragon Synergy cards. He has embraced the Shadow in his deck. This is kind of an old-school Control Priest deck with the Reno tools. This is not a deck we've seen much before.
Yeah, I'm actually looking. He has just a Carchu card. I haven't seen that in Priest for a long time.
Absolutely. This is definitely something that fr0zen may think, okay, he's playing Reno Priest, how can it be good? Well, I don't know how much fr0zen has played against this exact deck. We did hear that he spent his time while he's been in the Bahamas preparing for his matches, but if he's been just sort of discounting this deck, it's possible he has not put in the playtesting he needs.
Well, I doubt that at least. I think fr0zen's probably put enough time in, at least in his mind. For b787, just going to use Shadow Word Pain here. That is one of the premium targets to remove, as well as Accolade of Pain. You do have Shadow Word Horror, though, to back you up. Worst case scenario, you can just use Excavated Evil. You know, but the important thing is actually not necessarily what the priest is able to do, but whether or not Freeze Mage can draw into the ideal hand, because they can just kill priest at 30 sometimes, no matter how much they're defending themselves.
Yeah, we've been talking about the Reno priest kind of broadly, but this matchup I think is its worst in fr0zen's lineup, and I think that's why fr0zen went to this deck. You know, he's had a string of games where they just did not go his way. This is one that I suspect will end up firmly in his favor. The Reno Priest deck doesn't really put any pressure on you. It is right now with the Priest of the Feast, but 3 damage per turn doesn't add up very fast, and b787 does not have that many powerful tools to increase that clock, whereas if fr0zen gets the time he needs, he'll just blow him up in 1 turn.
I am actually kind of a big fan of making sure that you can get pressure out of certain cards as fast as you can, so getting out Harrison Jones, getting out Sylvanas, but they are also problematic cards because of the long-term implications. For example, Arcanine Soul Priest, if it's on the board, if your opponent freezes the board, you cannot heal, so they can actually just play a regular burn scenario over 2 turns. Sylvanas, liable to steal really bad minions from your opponents like a Doomsayer, so you have to be very cautious with your timing on it. You did see 1 Doomsayer being used, so you're probably feeling better about Sylvanas, but you know, cards like Harrison Jones and Arcanine Soul Priest probably want to get that out sooner than later, or maybe not play them at all.
Interesting. Excavated Evil here from b787. It seems that he wants to just be able to keep attacking face with his Priest of the Feast and shuffle that weak card into fr0zen's deck to disrupt his combo. He had a number of other options that turn. Like you mentioned, he could play Harrison Jones. He had the Powered Shield to maybe protect that. But it looks like he's deciding to try to maximize his immediate clock here and disrupt fr0zen.
Yeah, I actually really like this play from fr0zen. Something that a lot of people might be tempted. I have 6 mana. I have 10 cards. I have Emperor Thaurissan. It's a match made in heaven. But fr0zen realizes that the most important thing to do is discount the cards that will kill the priest in 1 turn. Because they have Reno Jackson, you have to be able to deal 27, 28 points of damage at 1 point, maybe even more. So get the Ice Lances, get the Evolved Kobolds into your hand.
All right, well, the Courier finds Faceless Summoner. That's a good clock. And Kazakus, that's a pretty important card too, because it can find b787 armor, which can get him out of that 1-turn kill range, but no armor available in any of these potion selections.
But perhaps maybe a big board. You know,
yep,
one of those things you have to consider is, can I just pressure the Freeze Mage out of the game? That is actually the primary way you counter Freeze Mage.
It's true.
Yeah, having Flare, having Eater Seekers is great, but the actual way you kill Freeze Mage is just straight up board pressure every single turn. Yeah, threaten the Ice Block every turn, which isn't exactly what Priest is great at doing. Priest is really good at annoying you, causing you to rage and ask for mind control nerfs if you have been with us since the beginning of Hearthstone.
Ice Lance, one of those key cards that does add up in the 1-turn kill plan that fr0zen is looking for. Shuffling a Roaring Torch into his deck again, one of those cards that can add up to 30 right away. And then the Faceless Summoner from that Courier here finds Tinkmaster.
Just reasonable stats. Average.
This time, for sure.
Alexstrasza, one of those important cards as well. But at the same time, you have to make sure to get a good read on your opponent's hand. You know, have they been holding specific cards for a while? If they have Reno Jackson, then playing Alexstrasza is kind of moot. But we'll see. fr0zen still has a couple of more turns before he has to make an ultimate decision. But b787, he's going to be the one who has to formulate a game plan to win the game.
Yeah, looks like he was about to just play the Northshire Cleric and says go hold on, rethink things.
All right, Harrison Jones, I completely approve of this play, trying to get some pressure onto the board. A second Ice Lance. fr0zen's just going to go straight for the Alexstrasza, realizing that his opponent, unless he has Reno Jackson, can't really answer, and b787 does have the Reno, also has opportunities to try to even maximize it more. He can try to be greedy and play Darkshire Alchemist, remove the board instead, if he tries to get even more value. This is definitely a tightrope you have to walk.
Yeah, trying to manage exactly what you're doing with your various healing effects is pretty crucial in the matchup, because you need to, you mentioned, kind of a tightrope between putting on pressure and keeping yourself out of burn range here.
He would be out of burn range from, I believe, at least the Thaunos optimal damage, because Thaunos, Fireball, Frostbolt, Ice Lance, plus the hero power is 21 damage, and he'd be at 22 with the Darkshire Alchemist. But maybe he's feeling like his opponent has extended range. I think this is a complete matchup you have to actually understand the matchup really deep in terms of the combos. Perhaps he may have used Reno Jackson a little bit too early here.
It's possible. It's possible that he could have maybe saved that to protect him even more. Though it's true that if you're in range of being killed from, say, 25, you're often in range of being killed from the total that the Alchemist can actually bring you to. Like, he could have Alchemist himself, healed himself in 21. It's like, okay, if your opponent is throwing Burn at you, you're often going to get back to a similar sort of total. But Emperor fr0zen plus Frost Nova will get discounts on this hand, and does make things a little bit awkward for b787. He needs to deal with both the body of this as well as the discounts.
He kind of can deal with it. Like, I guess Embrace the Shadow and Dark Shadow Alchemist, but then you remove your healing opportunity to try and do it. You can Dragonfire Potion, remove your own board.
So what is the damage potential in fr0zen's hand here? He has double Frostbolt, double Ice Lance, double Fireball. So he has the
6, 12, 18 plus 4, so 26, 27 damage. If he picks up Thanos, that's game. If he picks up Evolved Cobalt, that actually might be considered very close as well, because I think he has enough mana to play all that. Yeah, that would be game. 4, 8, 10. Actually, I think so, yeah. So fr0zen's looking for any of his spell damage or any of his ability to enable it. He can also stall. He has Blizzard and Frost Nova over the couple turns. Do you think he should also start tossing away Burn? Like, for example, Fireball would not even be playable if you drew the Evolved Cobalt. I think he has to play Evolved Cobalt plus the Roaring Torch, Fireball, or Frostbolts, and Ice Lances.
Yeah, the awkward thing is that you're playing against a Priest who's just healing themselves for 2 each turn, so you're not necessarily actually getting meaningful incremental damage in. Now he's actually giving his opponent even more draws.
But I don't think the draws really matter nearly as much. Your opponent has played Reno, so that's the worst case scenario.
Yeah, the actual healing remaining in b787's deck is pretty limited. He's already played his Priest of the Feast. He's already played his Reno Jackson. He has already played his Darkshire Alchemist. So looking through his list, that's it. The only other sort of burst healing he even has available is Justicar Trueheart to allow himself to heal an additional time in the turn.
Yeah. I mean, fr0zen has 12 cards remaining in his deck. It's actually very unusual. Reno Priest is ahead in the card draw. But all fr0zen needs to do is just draw...
Doomguard picked up from the Kazakus potion. It matters its burst. If fr0zen is not calculating the possibility of this coming, it could very easily throw him off dramatically.
Yeah, I mean, fr0zen just needs to find that Evolved Cobalt, though, and just win the game. It still doesn't really matter what b787 is able to do. He has multiple ways to deal with his Doomsayer. Could end up Shadow Word Horroring. Cabal Shadow Priest is great, but nothing that useful.
Interestingly, Shadow Word Horror actually kills the Doomsayer without killing any of b787's minions.
Yeah, there you go. And he can even develop behind it.
And now that this is the second Doomsayer, he can safely play Sylvanas.
There's no more Freeze, I believe. Or actually, I think he has 1 Frost Nova maybe remaining, but 2 Blizzards have been used as well. And now with both Doomsayers being used, he feels free to play Sylvanas, one of his stronger minions. Ooh, b787 almost immediately plays Circle of Healing. Now he's hesitating. What is he hesitating for?
I'm curious. I'm not really sure, because fr0zen has played both copies of Blizzard, so there's not like really flashpoints on his minions that he cares about. There is no Flame Strike in his deck, so that's not something that he's really concerned about the possibility of. Does just go ahead and heal them all up. fr0zen, I don't think really cares that much about the health. Oh, there is Kobold.
All right.
And yeah, fr0zen, he knows how this works.
Yeah.
Kobold comes down. He has the ability to Roaring Torch, Frostbolt, Frostbolt, Ice Lance, Ice Lance.
Yeah, he's got 32 at least.
This is a lot of damage with +2 spell damage from each of these. And exactly what he was looking for to get him right back into this series.
And, fr0zen, he had still a couple turns to draw into Ice Block. Plus, he had other ways to draw. We haven't seen Novice Engineers, for example. He had a lot of ways to accelerate and most likely get it in the couple turns that he had. And fr0zen stays alive, being able to rely on Freeze Mage for a win, but he's still not even tied up the series. It's 2-3.
Yeah, and it will be the Reno Priest for b787 for all of the rest of the games. And that was, as you mentioned, definitely its toughest matchup in fr0zen's remaining decks, I feel like. But that actually was relatively close. It felt like fr0zen, was digging a little bit, and there were opportunities for b787 to win if fr0zen had missed for a couple more turns.
Yeah,
I guess there's still a lot of card draw left, so maybe not. Maybe I'm giving a little too much drama into what just happened there.
Well, I do like what you're saying. Reno Priest had no business even being within striking distance, and Freeze Mage definitely got close. And you can see fr0zen felt like, whew. If I lost that game, not only would the series be over, but it'd also be kind of just the finishing blow on what has been a mark of embarrassment for him. It's just the fact that fr0zen's way better of a player than he showcased in this series so far.
Yeah, and it's got to be something that's weighing on his mind here. He mentioned that he thinks he's one of the best players in the world. He feels like if he gets an opportunity, he can win a championship, and he's not playing like that. He is definitely struggling here on this stage, and hoping to make a comeback in this match.
All right, let's turn to Malagos Druid once again up against Priest, a deck that has a lot of problems for Dragon Priest or Reno Dragon Priest to solve.
It's not even Reno Dragon Priest. If it were Reno Dragon Priest, it would, I think, even have a little bit of a better matchup. It's just Reno Control Priest. He doesn't have the dragon synergy.
You're right.
His only dragon is Ysera.
Yeah, I saw Ysera, and it kind of threw me off. I'm like, well, yeah, he's got dragons in it, because, he has Brand Bronzebeard, a few other things. I'm like, oh, he doesn't even have that. Oh, a little weird.
I would describe that deck as a little weird, yes.
Yeah, unusual. Well, Priest is completely okay with Druid passing. fr0zen no Wild Growth or Innervate to capitalize on this Mire Keeper. It's going to be a slow start. However, once again, I do feel like it's going to be on the Druid to make the big plays. Priest? Passing is Priest's middle name. It's Anduin. I pass on turn 2, win.
The light shall burn you.
There's nothing else he does.
That's your play on turn 2, often turn 3,
fr0zen's going to ramp, though. And the big thing is that fr0zen doesn't actually have follow-up draw. This is actually very problematic. But at the same time, b787 doesn't have the ideal hand of being able to have plays on Kurt. If the best scenario is you have the turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, and all of a sudden Druid can't really take command of the board. Because this is turn 4, and a 3-3 is actually not even dealt with by your opponent. It has to contest with a Kazakus bot.
All right, well, it is Kazakus, and goes for a 5. Draw 2 cards is probably what he's looking for here, but he has a pretty full hand already.
Armor is also valuable, too,
true.
because
it is true.
You're able to get a set of combo ranges if you're able to stabilize onto the board.
Yeah, but much like we were talking about with the Reno Mage matchup, often just making a big board can be difficult for the Priest to deal with. fr0zen here just protecting his board, taking down Kazakus, and getting some damage in with that Mire Keeper.
Yeah, fr0zen, he just knows that he needs to get that chip damage in with the Druid. Very crucial. Making sure that he can get every little opportunity. And he's played this deck so much, he knows it in and out. It is one of his favorite decks, and here's why.
Kindred, because it allows you to play a different game plan and adapt to your opponent's strategy based on the board state.
And adapt it is. You're going to have to get that Mire Keeper in a lot of turns in a row.
Yeah, when we were talking to fr0zen about his preference for combo decks, he felt like they really reward creative players. Often people tunnel vision on your combo, but also you need to be able to figure out when you need to break up your combo and when you're under a lot of pressure. Finds a Nourish, but there is a little bit of pressure there from the Sylvanas threatening to potentially take that Ancient of War away from fr0zen.
And hits some awkward cards here. Perhaps Raven Idol is useful later on, but fr0zen has to think right now about the board state, like you said. Maximizing damage per turn is great, but Sylvanas does introduce a complicated trade, and Druid, without Keeper the Grove for a year now, doesn't have a way to easily remove it. He could set it up so that way he trades into Sylvanas now and try to react to it, but then you're also giving initiative to your opponent. It doesn't feel good no matter which way you cut it.
Diggs finds Naturalize is kind of interesting. b787's hand is pretty full.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
He actually has 9 cards in hand, so Naturalize is a 1-mana way to remove a minion here that actually burns your opponent a card, which could be relevant.
So if your opponent steals something really big or plays a really big threat like Sarah, you can squeeze a Naturalize and 9 more mana following turns.
Well, actually, it allows him. Oh, looks like he changed his.
Oh,
yeah.
this is very cute. Using living roots, just the roots themselves, and naturalize, forcing an overdraw, plus potentially stealing a very weak minion. Feast of the Feast, not that great. And fr0zen's Gambit pays off, burning Raza the Chained. Much to the chagrin of Brian Kibler, I think he died a little inside.
I love that card. The card's great. He doesn't have Beardo in his deck, so it's way less cool, though.
Yeah. Plus, the he does have the Cabal Courier for the Dream.
It's true.
Getting the what is it, the Cold
Caldera
Balls?
Drake.
Yeah,
but he doesn't have
Caldera
damage
Drake.
ability for his hero power. There's no shadow form in his deck.
You lack imagination, sir.
I don't. I just read deck lists.
You
man.
just play Embrace the Shadow. And
Oh, it's true. You're
you
right.
just play Alchemist Soul Priest.
It's true. I didn't read that part of the deck list. I'm an idiot.
All right, well, you know, b787 has the Shadow Word Death. Is it worth using in this position when your opponent already has demonstrated that he's... I mean, your opponent's already gotten value off the trade.
Well, I
Feels
believe
a
his
little bit weaker.
Kazakus potion was deal 5 damage, gain 7 armor, if I recall
Oh,
correctly.
was it?
So
Okay.
that does give him a clean way to remove the Ancient of War and save the death if he wants for, say, Kun. Oh, gonna go ahead and excavate.
Ah, and use a coin with
There
the
we
Wild Pyromancer. Very resourceful use here. But it does make the Pyromancer vulnerable just to hero power. And you can see that he wants to save Shadow Word Death. He wants to save this Pine-sized Potion plus the Shadow Word Pain combinations because he feels like there's bigger fish to fry.
And I also like holding onto the Kazakus potion because it is a way to deal with minions that are tougher to deal with, like the Azure Drake that we see come down this turn, which otherwise he would be struggling to be able to kill.
b787 gonna have to find a way to kill the Azure Drake. Also, Thaunos is a prime target for the Cabal Shadow Priest.
Ooh, there's the combo.
Oh, the dream combo. But that's definitely better on a board with a lot more minions than just an Azure Drake. Or is it?
It's interesting with the potion, too, because he wants to play the potion before he expects his opponent might be able to combo him, because the potion protects him, or rather the armor would protect him from the one-turn kill possibility of the burst damage. That said, you know, he may need to fire it off to deal with the Azure Drake here. And he will.
Yeah, this is one of those things where you can't necessarily be too greedy, but at the same time, you know, it's not like this ooze does very much either. So you're once again going to be presented with a big threat. fr0zen just going to start drawing right now. He's looking for big combos, big things to help him draw. Auctioneer would be massive pickup. Azure Drake is already very good too. This is starting to get harder and harder.
There's Malagos.
I mean, Malagos can get dealt with. It's all about whether or not
there's Auctioneer.
fr0zen can kill him in one turn.
And that is a handful of cheap spells. He even has Wild Growth, he has Innervate, he has lots of ways to turn those cards into more cards with the Auctioneer.
Oh, Embrace the Shadow. Actually, that's a really big pickup. Now b787 can use his Darkshire Alchemist to remove his opponent. Or sorry, remove his
opponent.
Remove his
Oh,
opponent.
God.
That card's broken. Remove the Azure Drake. Very good sequencing, making sure that he has an opportunity to heal, which matters a lot more than dealing 2 face damage to your opponent. And fr0zen doesn't actually have another way to threaten immediately with the Azure Drake, so now he has to follow up with, well, drawing a bajillion cards maybe, or perhaps loading up the board. Is this the turn to use all your stuff?
No, looks like it's at least an Auctioneer turn. No, maybe not.
Well, what's tricky is that he has 10 cards, so he actually has to make sure to plan everything so that way he doesn't overdraw, because Auctioneer with the Wild Growth will actually force him to draw too many cards.
It's true. It's true.
He can play, you know, Fandral, for example, with it. But then if you have Fandral and you draw Raven
then he needs
Idol,
to Innervate.
then you just draw 2. Yeah, it's true.
And he might want to save the Innervate to use alongside the Malagos Aviana turn. Or even perhaps if he doesn't find Kun, he could have a Malagos turn with Innervate.
One example is, for example, you can play, you know, Wild Growth before you play Auctioneer, and then you just get 1 less draw so you don't overdraw. It looks like fr0zen doesn't have a very clean way to just guarantee dealing with the 4/5. So he just plays Fandral, and he only plays a Wild Growth, like we mentioned, just to save it for the excess mana.
Yeah, this lets him have additional mana next turn alongside the Auctioneer and still have the cheap card draw available.
Everyone's favorite card from last year's Summer of Shaman, Tuskar Totemic.
There's no able to come out anymore from this, though. So
yeah, I wonder if there's any totem specifically that could be really useful. Maybe the Taunt Totem to stop something, or a 1/1. You can't underestimate the damage of a 1-attack minion if you need Auchenai plus something
well,
else.
There's Shapeshift there, so 1/1's probably not going to do all
Oh,
that
you're
much.
right. You're right. But you know, does Druid want to use 2 mana to shapeshift all the time? Maybe not. So maybe he survives.
Definitely deep in the tank here, deciding, does he want to try and get some pressure on? Yeah. Does he want to...
Maybe he's even dead, possibly.
Yeah.
His opponent's just holding so many cards, he just played excess mana. If your opponent plays Wild Growth right before a turn with like 9 cards and 10 mana, you probably feel like this is a big auctioneer.
Like, okay, oh god, what's going to happen to me?
Wow. Gadgetzan Auctioneer, that is quite the number of cards that can be drawn. Frozen could actually draw the rest of his deck here, possibly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Living Roots, important to pair with Malygos. He's already used 1 Living Roots. He hasn't used any of the Moonfires, and he does have available Swipe. He also has yet to hit his Emperor Thorsan, which will discount everything and make it all playable in 1 fell swoop.
Well, speak of the devil, there is the good Emperor. And he can actually double innervate out this Emperor, which will draw him more cards that will be discounted by the Emperor.
I like it. And, well, Moonfire being discounted is a little redundant. But, the point being is that Nat Malygos is 8 mana. Still not able to play Swipe, though.
But we're going to see something awesome this turn, I think. The combo clear.
Oh!
Pint-sized potion plus Shattering Horror.
You can't remove a straight-up Malygos. Oh, you have Entomb now.
You just picked up Entomb.
Okay, yeah, maybe. You do kill off your own Stoneclaw Totem, though.
Shucks. you kill off an Emperor Thorsan and an Auctioneer.
Yeah. Oh, he's really agonizing. Oh, do I have to lose the totem too? Not the totem.
We were such good friends, me and Stoneclaw Totem. He's been around for a turn.
I remember like it was yesterday. Interestingly enough, too, he does have the interesting anti-synergy with Alkanite Soul Priest and Reno Jackson for the 30 damage to yourself.
It wouldn't kill him.
He's at 32. He's at 32. You're right. It only does 30 damage.
Mondo combo.
I mean, fr0zen knows this combo exists. Oh man, b787 taking a moment for the fallen Stoneclaw Totem.
Well, this is actually now kind of interesting because if fr0zen were to fire off a bunch of damage at b787's face, he can't heal because he has a Soul Priest in play. I don't know that there's a way. Right. I don't think there's actually a way that he can assemble a bunch of damage at fr0zen that wouldn't, or rather at b787 that wouldn't at least allow him to trade into something on the board.
He could hero power his own Alkanite Soul Priest.
Right, but he'd still
into Malygos.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like because he'd have to play the Malygos to do it.
Right.
He could clear it off.
Sure. All right, fr0zen trying to free up his hand. Can't play both swipes. He might even fire a swipe to the face because it just removes some of that armor. We'll see what he picks up. Cute Excavated Evil being drawn.
Well, this is going to be all of the cards in fr0zen's deck are going to be drawn by next turn. He has 1 card remaining in his deck, chipping away at this armor. Now it's math time. He's already played one of the Living Roots. His last card is Kuhn the Forgotten King, so we 100% know what is available to him next turn. And so does b787 as
he plays a Reno. He knows that he's in trouble. He knows that this is the last card and the combo. I don't know if he can get there, but he can play a lot of cards. Let's just go ahead and watch how this drops to Kibler. Ooh. Yeah, that'll get him there.
Oh, yeah. Not one off this time.
Yeah, he's got him way covered, and fr0zen has tied the series with an 8-card combination attack. The exact dream he's been waiting for, drawing on the 30th card.
And now, all the pressure was on fr0zen, down 3-1, but everything is even now. 3-3 going to the final game. At Reno Priest, as fr0zen predicted, maybe b787's downfall.
Yeah, but at the same time, I gotta say, I haven't actually played much of Dragon Priest versus Reno Priest, especially a Reno Control Priest. Does the Dragon Priest have too much tempo for Reno Priest to fight back, or do you feel like Reno Priest actually has all the answers?
Well, one of the things about the Reno Priest versus Dragon Priest is that the Reno Priest does have these really powerful combinations that can swing the board massively. We saw the Pint-Sized Potion plus Shattered Horror. That's really effective against a deck that's trying to get multiple large minions on board. We also see the Auchenai plus Circle of Healing or Embrace the Shadow plus Circle of Healing. Lots of tools there. One key thing, too, though, is that the the Dragon Priest has a lot of tools to play the long game with the Draconid Operatives, the Netherspite Historian, so lots of things they can do to steal cards from their opponent's deck to really go long as well.
Well, really love how fr0zen's able to pick up the pace. It seems like he's, for the most part, been able to center himself. You know, we saw this crucial moment where most people, they feel like when they see Sylvanas, they tend to panic. You know, should I leave it up for my opponent? Should I try to trade into it? How do I trade into it? And he's able to adapt by utilizing Naturalize and his Living Roots in combination. This is what Raven Idol and Discover, they love to go in combination because you get to have these unusual synergies that pop up. And this paid off huge dividends. Dealing that 1/1 only was a big deal.
Yeah, and you know, we heard fr0zen talk a bit, or rather we talked to fr0zen about how he loves combo decks because they force you to adapt, because they force you into situations where you need to be creative, and that creativity certainly paid off there.
Yeah, so he's like, well, fr0zen said, you counterspelled my Nourish. I'm going to get this Naturalize off the Raven Idol to retaliate from the Babbling Book, so tit for tat. Now we go into game number 7. It's all on the line, Brian. The winner of this will be only one match away from guaranteeing themselves top 8.
Yeah, and we saw fr0zen's face here. We've seen him a lot on camera when he was sort of in those rough situations earlier. He looks so much calmer now. It's like he's back into his natural habitat here. By the way, we just heard the priest versus priest greeting. I don't know that I've ever heard that HCT before.
Make a wish. You just saw priest versus priest greet each other. It's like a shooting star in the sky.
I will defend the light.
Now we'll
I think
see.
that's what it is.
Both of these people apparently fight for the light, so one of them's got to come out on top. fr0zen is going to be the one that needs to get onto the board very quickly. We know that there are clears available in b787's deck. I believe Pint-Sized Potion and Shadow Wheel Horror should clear pretty much everything outside of a big Netherspite Historian minion that comes out. Not to mention that I think the Discovers can get a little wonky. You know, fr0zen can maybe discover something crazy. If it's late stages of the game, we've seen people discover Kazakus and use it because they have nothing left in their deck. It gets kind of ridiculous very fast.
Yeah, this is pretty key, though. The Shadow Word Pain for fr0zen definitely swinging the early game back in his favor. The Northshire Cleric, a very crucial minion in these early stages of the games, can definitely give a player a significant advantage in terms of resources.
Yeah, this is really important. You know, the Shadow Word Pain eliminated Northshire Cleric, but Acolyte Pain can't get dealt with now. There's no Shadow Word Pain for fr0zen. He just plays Brand Bronzebeard on curve. This is a play that's very hard for many players. They feel like they need to save Brand for guaranteed value, but your opponent has shown that he can't Shadow Word Pain a Northshire Cleric yourself. He shouldn't be able to deal with it now.
And no answer to Brand. So unanswered Brand's Bronzebeard will allow fr0zen to potentially just coin out a Draconid Operative and get double Discover this turn.
Double Discover. Now we know that Ysera, one of the most powerful cards, is in the hand already, but there's still plenty of good stuff. Wow, Twilight Drake is a really big pickup here.
Yeah, Twilight Drake is a great card against any priest deck, really. Whew. Sylvanas as well. So 2 really potent anti-priest minions picked up by fr0zen, or at least available to him here.
More importantly, too, it's also a look between 6 cards that B787 doesn't have. This is a huge scouting scout from fr0zen.
Yeah, and fr0zen is a player who deals with a lot of information while he's playing. He tracks tons of things. He knows all these cards to the left. He's talking about his hand reading ability before. All those cards to the left, those are not any of the cards he just saw in that Discover. So lots of information.
So here's an interesting crux. You know, you want to kill Brand and Northshire Cleric. Both help. Both are really powerful for Priest to leave onto the board. But you do also want to develop the Raza, and it feels like Shadow Word Horror is one of the important cards to combo with Pond-Sized Potion for a board clear. It's a little bit late now, you know. If you want to use Shadow Word Horror, you already commit to killing off the Brand Bronzebeard, and it almost feels like Raza the Chained is the only play in this position. But it was definitely worth thinking about.
And here, this is kind of an interesting decision too, because B787 could choose to heal his Priest of the Feast, but there is a Northshire Cleric on the other side of the board, which would give fr0zen a card, and decides to just go ahead and heal his face, deny that card. It does mean that the Priest of the Feast is a bit more vulnerable, however.
It's exactly the juncture of which I was saying, is Shadow Word Horror just better in that position, because you want to kill both the Cleric and the Brand. Now Raza's tempo that you were able to gain is nullified a lot. I mean, I don't think the health matters. It almost seems like you just played a 5/5 on 5.
It's interesting too, because if you had played the Shadow Word Horror, you'd be able to prevent your opponent from having the damage left to kill your 3/6 anyway. He only has a 5 attack minion on board.
Yep, precisely.
You wish
Wow, fr0zen prioritizing the Northshire Cleric life as opposed to the Draconet Operative, which is an easy trade for b787. So this is how much fr0zen wants to get ahead in the value game. He's double discovered. He knows that as time goes on, he's got really powerful cards like Twilight Drake and Sylvanos. He's trying to play the value game against the Reno Control Priest.
Yeah, well, one of the weird things about the Dragon Priest that we mentioned in the introduction here, Dragon Priest has so many powerful tools to go long. So if he is able to pick up just a little bit more extra resources and get him to those powerful cards, you know, draw his other operative, draw his other historian. It's just so much power in the long game that he could even just overpower the Reno Priest deck.
Yeah, and I think b787 is going to have to make an important decision very soon. Whether or not he plays for the board and tries, because it's very clear his opponent's playing for value with the Cabal Talon Priest on the draw mechanic. He has to decide, if I'm going to play for tempo, I can play Juskar Trueheart, get my hero power very high value, try to preserve my board, and use Ysera and other minions to close the game. Or if I'm going to try to play for the long term, because in the end, this game could go to fatigue and saying, I'm the control deck, I have the answers.
All right, well, does use Dragonfire Potion to clear off those two minions.
That was kind of low value, though.
It is, but Dragonfire Potion is a card that struggles to get value in this matchup. You're playing against a Dragon Priest deck, so very often you'll find boards that it won't have any real effectiveness at all. So I like b787's choice to pull the trigger with it right there.
True that, and I think you know, playing the Juskar Trueheart there doesn't actually even guarantee you tempo because the 6/3 body, very vulnerable to a lot of things. The minion on board, Blackwing Corruptor. So you want to be very careful about that.
Nefarian is another very strong long game value card that fr0zen can pick up.
Weird.
And
Dragon Priest is like the better late game deck than the Reno Control.
That's actually something that I recognized when I was playing a lot of Reno Priest for a while. You would lose value games against a lot of decks, and Dragon Priest is certainly one of them. And yeah, b787 picks up Harrison Jones. That is not a strong card in this matchup.
No, remember, he was trying to target decks like Pirate Warrior. He is one of two players, fr0zen being the other one, to not bring Pirate Warrior. And just his luck, he runs into the one guy. But actually, to be quite fair also, fr0zen specifically scouted the top seeds in every single region. He said, I have a high chance of hitting players that will play anti-aggro lineups, so I'm going to try to punish that. And fr0zen specifically was counting for guys like b787. So fr0zen actually accounted for it, and that's why he says he made the proper read. He feels like he got the opponent that he prepared for.
Well, and from our conversations with b787 earlier in the week, he's someone that's pretty easy to read. He said he'd rather lose playing control decks than win playing aggro decks. He just loves that sort of strategy so much.
Yeah, of course, he's inspired by Matsun. You may remember him from the APAC Winter Championship last year. That's where he saw a fellow Japanese player playing, and that's what inspired him to play, and that's why he loves Control Warrior. That's why it's his favorite deck. fr0zen, it seems like the opponent just demonstrated a very weak turn, and you're also almost doubling the card value. You have 2 minions on board plus card draw and almost a full hand. With Nefarian and Netherspite Historian, the onus is on b787 to deal with your threats, and also he can continue to have a big amount of resources. This is completely in fr0zen's momentum right now, and I don't know if b787 can stabilize here.
I was going to say, if he's really looking for Pint-Sized Potion right here, it would be a strong card to turn the board around. Expiated Evil, though, takes out everything but the Drake.
Okay.
And Courier finds Kazakus!
That is one of the keys to be able to win the game. He has Kazakus. He still has Brand in the deck.
Wow.
He can get up to 3 Kazakus, maybe even more if there's something that we're not expecting.
Well, you know what card's good in long value games, like the one fr0zen is trying to play? Kazakus.
Well, I mean, here comes another question, too. You know, if Kazakus isn't finding the right answer, are you going to get out-tempoed? These are a lot of 4-attack minions. You don't have Pint-Sized Potion. fr0zen's ignoring the minion. Oh, okay, he's going to trade. He's going to trade. But if he's ignoring the minion, how do you actually deal with that board?
It's definitely tough, and yeah, you know, we see one of the reasons that these decks can kind of struggle, and we see a wince from fr0zen there. And b787 goes for 5 cost, finds the 4 damage AoE, and I believe resummon 2.
That's huge.
I think he may just, snapping that off right away. Huge board swing here. Finds some weak minions, but is able to clear off a incredibly strong board from fr0zen.
Huge in quotation marks. I mean, it's the fact that he's able to play a couple minions is big, but
most of the fact that he removed several minions that are very tough for his deck to remove.
Yeah, you're right. Bookworm, not necessarily that bad of a pickup in this position. Shieldmaw is also okay too because it threatens the board. It does threaten your own Nanocite Historian, which might be useful. So b787, maybe he finds an opportunity to play Ysera now. You know, something that we were kind of wondering is if he falls too far behind, but perhaps he doesn't have to if he has Sylvanas. It's one of those interesting situations where you can make an argument for both cases.
And now, you know, there are 10 mana available for b787. Could play Ysera, and I expect we may see just that.
Wow, but it lines up really well onto fr0zen with Sylvanas off that Discover, which b787, you have to, you don't always want to play around potential Discovers, but you have to also keep in mind, your opponent's been holding Discover cards for a while, and you know that Sylvanas and Shadow Word Death is a way to deal with it. However, if your opponent doesn't have it, Sylvanas, or sorry, the Ysera, that's one of the hardest minions to deal with as Priest.
It's true. And it's going to be difficult for b787 to actually get to establish a board state where his opponent can't get value out of Sylvanas Shadow Word Death, and he can play Ysera. But yeah,
man,
this is going to be a big swing here. And suddenly, Ysera goes over to fr0zen, and now it is b787 who has no way to deal with it.
Yeah, well, he picked up Emerald Drake. Oh, he does have a Shadow Word Heart.
He does have his own Sylvanas Shadow Word Death. He wants to go for the 1 and 3. But
I guess
Pint-sized potion?
Pint-sized potion would be massive.
Brand. Nothing to go with it right now. And yeah, this Ysera for fr0zen is going to generate a lot of value.
Yeah. It might have to be a Sylvanas play and hope that your opponent can't deal with it very efficiently.
Yeah, what's your plan otherwise? It just gets worse from here in a lot of ways.
So if you play Sylvanas, is that the only thing you're playing? If you play Emerald Drake behind it, you're actually giving your opponents ways to trade better for them, so Sylvanas gets worse value. Also, you know, interestingly enough, fr0zen picks up Emerald Drake, which is yet another dragon for synergy in case he wants to play Nefarian and Ash Drake before that.
I have no time for games.
Looks like Sylvanas and Doomsayer just wants to gain a little bit of life and complicate the board state, add a lot of board tension. What is fr0zen going to do to answer this?
Yeah, this is definitely a tough situation for fr0zen here. He can attack both of his minions into Doomsayer, attack into the Sylvanas, perhaps Powered Shield his Bookworm so it lives, play a small minion and Holy Nova. That will allow him to kill everything on b787's side of the board and have 4 minions to potentially sacrifice to the Sylvanas steal. So only a 25% chance that he loses his Ysera.
Is there a possibility to just let everything die?
That's an option too. I don't know that I like that one because you're playing against the Reno Priest deck that can definitely have powerful long game. You saw that he got a bonus Kazakus, so he still has another Kazakus remaining in his deck. Though the power of Kazakus does go down once you play Doomsayer because the resummon ability is much weaker.
That's true. Yeah. Doomsayer is now in the pool, so is Sylvanas, so it feels like a huge gambit moving forward. But Ysera isn't. Okay, so fr0zen just going to set up a miniature Taunt here just to complicate the board a little bit more. He is very vulnerable to Pint-sized Potion and the Shadow Word Horror, but I don't think he's playing around that combo at this point. I think he's just thinking about ways he can get more value off Ysera and force his opponent to awkward spots.
Embrace the Shadow.
Yeah, no Circle of Healing to pair with that, and b787 just, the victim of the Reno Priest, something that we're talking about all series long. Too many pieces, not enough finishing of the puzzle.
Well, he does have the ability to Shadow Word Horror, which would remove the taunt because it's 2 power. He could then attack into the 3/5 and potentially just kill his own Sylvanas and have a 50% chance of stealing Ysera.
Okay. Yeah, you actually kill off the Nanocite Historian by doing that too.
Right, exactly.
You know what? I think 50% odds to get momentum back in your favor, it might be your best percentage versus playing the long game of just trying to hope that your opponent doesn't load up the board a lot more and hope that Sylvanas will carry the board is going to be really tough. So I like it. I like it. I think that's what he's going for. Oh no, he's taking a little bit more of a passive route. Instead, just trying to play Justicar Trueheart and get more value off the hero power. He says, you know what? Not killing Sylvanas introduces, some complicated board states.
You're giving your opponent extra Ysera cards every turn here. Like, if one of these is Dream, your ability to even threaten the steal with Sylvanas, suddenly gets a lot worse.
True that.
So, this is definitely a spot where b787 is putting himself into that is just going to keep, it feels like to me, kind of getting worse each turn.
And fr0zen just introducing more roadblocks, loading up the board. Also, if your opponent had a bunch of Twilight Whelps, loaded up the board with weak minions, your Sylvanas would get like less value on average. But I think b787 is thinking about, holding so many cards that might combo. What if I pick up Circle of Healing? Maybe I have an opportunity to swing the board that way.
It's true.
Doesn't seem like going to be the case, though. Everything is just a little too awkward right now for the hand. The good news, though, he's still got time. The game's not being threatened to be over in the next turn. But it might as well be if you can't deal with it. Oh, another card. Redundancy with the Embrace the Shadow.
Yeah, this is the problem with the sort of combo version of Reno Priest. You draw each of these cards, which, yeah, it's great if you draw it in combination with the right other card, but by themselves, cards like Embrace the Shadows, just not that impactful. He has Bran, and this is a deck that has very few battle cries. It's really Bran so you can power up your Kazakus and maybe a Darkshire Alchemist, but not really working with what he's actually drawn this game.
Well, the good news is that you can actually start layering your use of the Shadow Priest abilities. Say if you want to use Alchemist Soul Priest this turn, just to get onto the board, remove a little bit of it, and then hope that Embrace the Shadow can help carry you if you draw Circle of Healing. And in the end, just fighting for board control is what you need to do. But b787 is so far behind the resources, still very far away for fatigue from fr0zen. He's got 9 cards, so that's not an option to play for right now for b787.
I mean, just compare the hand size of these two players. There are 8 cards in fr0zen's hand. He's going to get another card at the end of this turn from Ysera. b787, he's down to 3, and several of those cards are just super low impact, while almost everything in fr0zen's hand is strong, and in the case of Nefarian, even generates more resources.
Yeah. And now he can actually guarantee that Sylvanas doesn't even steal anything significant through trades. Seems like fr0zen also has the ability to just answer whatever gets stolen here. He's even trading before attacking with the sister, trying to reduce the chances of stealing Ysera. All right. Does end up seeing it. Not the worst case, not the end of the world, because Executed Evil and Blackwing Corruptor does offer him some clear opportunities.
Yeah, he even has the Shadow of Death to take out the Emerald Drake.
Yeah, it's also good too. Very good planning here from fr0zen, just to make sure to plot everything out in case the worst case scenario happened, which it did. So no more Ysera cards, but he's got a lot of value. He's got Ysera Awakened and Emerald Drake. Very powerful swing opportunities for him if he ever loses the board or if he needs game-ending damage.
Shattered Pain, the draw for b787.
So I think this is actually just one of the problems too of Reno Priest is that they don't have very consistent card draw into their decks either. We saw Acolyte Pain draw a couple cards, that was huge, but b787 lost his Northshire Cleric on turn 2. That was a huge opportunity for him to potentially get all the right answers. We've seen Control Priest win games that it's considered unfavored against, primarily because of how many card draws they used to get. If you remember, Northshire Cleric and Wild Pyramid, Maz used to put that on display. Just draw 12 cards and kill your opponent's threats and get on the board. Not necessarily the case here.
For like 76 in one turn.
Only if you go full Northshire Cleric, which I would recommend.
Well, you can't do that. You can't do that in Reno Priest. So you only got one.
Only the most bold of Reno Priests go for double Northshire Cleric in their decks. b787, not much to do here. Just ends up removing and stalling. I mean, the hero power does stall for time, but I'm looking at the deck list, and there's not many things to follow up on it. There's no Elite Star Seeker, for example, to generate all of those situational removals and threats.
It's basically a Kazakus. Kazakus is the card remaining in his deck that really matters at this point. He needs to find Kazakus in order to have a chance to get back into this game.
And that Nefarian will speed up the clock a lot. You could be under pressure of dying. Oh, Twilight Drake, not that useful.
That's a powerful card against Priest in the early game, but when you have exhausted so many of your resources and the opposing Priest has such an imposing board, it is not effective. That's just a 4/4 for 4.
I mean, he could brand Twilight Drake, but he's just, with Shadow Word Death already being used and fr0zen was trying to pressure, and b787 is just not lining up any removal optimally at all. And this is what fr0zen's been trying to do. He's been trying to put enough threats that warrants a response, but he has a better threat later on. And that's what you want to do at Dragon Priest in the late stage of the game. Layer your threats. Make sure that you're pacing yourself and not overextending into everything and forcing your opponent to awkward situations.
And one of the things we saw the Dragon Priest struggle with the Reno Warlock earlier. And the reason the Reno Warlock is such a bad matchup is it has the tools to gain advantage naturally with its hero power. It has such powerful board clears, whereas the Reno Priest struggles to draw cards and has conditional board clears that it needs to draw particular combos for. And we've just seen b787 with these, situational combo cards in his hand, and he's just getting ground down. Frozen has so many more resources even left in his hand.
He has no idea how to actually physically react to a power or tentacles grabbing tempo against them. This is just a terrible spot. I think Flash Heal is just going to spell the end of the game. There's way too much pressure onto the board. You can use Embrace the Shadow and Flash Heal to remove some of the board in this position, but it's still not even enough.
Yeah, there's the Ysera Awakens and the Blackwing Corruptor in Frozen's hand. This game is pretty much over at this point.
He was so close, Brian. He was up 3-1. He had 3 chances with Reno Priest. A lot of things fell in his favor. Frozen messed up. He got some good matchups. Reno Warlock against Dragon Priest, for example. And still not able to close it out. Frozen was saying, I'm not worried prior to the series, because he's got Reno Priest in his lineup, and I think that's just not the deck you want to bring as the 5th. But b787, he said it himself. He'd rather bring decks like Reno Priest and Control Warrior and lose than bring Pirate Warrior and win. I'm not sure if he stands by that statement right now, but I gotta say, man, I admire his courage.
Yeah, it looks like his preference may pay off here, though. As he is playing the decks he wanted, but with the burst damage in his hand, it will be Frozen who's going to be moving on from this match with a win.
Yeah, he's got the Ysera Awakens, he's got the Blackwing Corruptor, and that's going to wrap it up. Frozen completes the comeback here, down 3-1, able to win 3 in a row, and shutting out the Reno Priest. He is going to be the first winner of the day.
Yeah, an epic match between these two players, one that looked all but decided by the deck list moving in, but turned out to be an epic series.
Yeah, and you know what? I think it might actually be the fact that it spoils the rest of the matches, because this had 9 different decks featuring very unique strategies, from combo deck lineups to control lineups to featuring Reno Priest, the only one in the tournament, the only Malygos combo Druid in the entire tournament. I love this best of 7, and I'm glad it went the distance.
Yeah, it was absolutely fantastic. We saw emotion from these players. We saw them in really tight spots. And, in the end, Frozen was able to regain his composure and come back on top.
But that's just the first best of 7 of many today. We're going to be going right over to the other side of Group A. Frozen will await the winner of X-Hope from China up against Russia Stanu Dachi. Rachel is waiting with Frozen, who just got past his first opponent.
Thank you so much, Dan. Now, Frozen, we have seen you stressing out this whole match. We've got a great camera right on your face, and you were about an inch off the desk the entire time. Tell me how that match felt for you.
I don't know. I knew I was going in extremely favored, which actually makes you incredibly nervous, because one mistake and you just lose the game, as you see in a few of those games, which is really rough. I don't know. I don't think I've ever been this nervous in my life.
Well, game 3 and 4, we especially saw you struggling. But in game 4, we had a regame. Was that an opportunity to reset for you?
Yeah, it was definitely an opportunity to reset. But really props to him for piloting his decks really well. I didn't see that many mistakes from his side. I just try my best, and really unfortunate how the series went out. I know a lot of people are expecting a lot more from me.
I wouldn't call it unfortunate. You won in the end. So what is your process for getting yourself back on track and for finishing it out so strongly?
Multiple times I couldn't really think very well after my mistakes, but I really toned down, think about all the possibilities, keep track of every single card like I practice. I do a lot of practice and try to let my muscle memory take over rather than my decisions during the game.
Well, it absolutely paid off for you. Congratulations. And I'm going to give it back to Dan on the desk. What do you think?
Well, you know, it doesn't matter how you got there if you got the victory. And the good thing is that the first series, Brian, has no indication on the next one. If he plays massive for the rest of the tournament,